Good evening, race fans, and welcome to TRTN's coverage, or maybe not just quite yet, because we appear to already be into connection failures, so great start off the bat there, guys. Let's try this again. Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to tonight's coverage of VSR Phoenix Season 10 Round 7, live exclusively on TRTN. Of course, as always, I am Regan Clark. You join us here in the final race of 2025, right here at the home of the South African Grand Prix, the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami. Founded in 1961 on the outskirts of Johannesburg, South Africa, namely near the town of Midrand in Gauteng, it's 16 turns and 2.8 miles of FIA Grade 2. One of two major motorsporting hubs in continental Africa, with the Kyalami 9 Hours, its largest calendar event, the second largest event of the year after the WRC's Safari Rally Kenya. It's also represented one of three major calendar events in South Africa in the last 5 years, with the Cape Town E-Prix in 2023 via the avenue of Formula E, and this year in the 2025 World Rally Raid Championship with the South Africa Safari Rally. But today is the home of round 7 of the championship, and riding off of the successes for Tyler Vermaak on his second career victory in VSR Phoenix Season 10 in Australia, we do find ourselves now staring down a slightly wider expanse heading into the championship standings here into round 7. The last race of 2025 now sees Tyler Vermaak up by 13 points over White Doctor in second place. VSR Chris now up to third place, with Elite Cassie down to fourth by 5 points away. Only 5 points away from him is VSR Oatsy to round out the top 5, with Region in 6th place. Coming towards the back of the top 10 then, we find Bully Boy in 7th place with 187 points, Grizz in 8th. As we see here, the start of qualifying in a moment's time here. Blue Frog in 9th, and to round out the top 10, Big Green Man in 10th place with 136 points. But we're right into 20 minutes of qualifying here. First out of the gates goes JDM Grizz. And of course, you've been waiting a long time for this one. Let's get on to the discussion whilst we've got plenty of time here of the qualifying predictions, some bizarre rumours going around the paddock, the BOP, and moreover, the first of our subjects right now, the discussion of that second part of the calendar. Of course, we're in the final round for the 2025 leg, round 7, and then you can see the winter break from tomorrow to January 6th of 2026, with January 7th, the next round at the Red Bull Ring. Back into the 45-minute sprint format in Red Bull Ring. No mandatory pit stop for that one. And then we're on to a twin set of hour-long races in Silverstone and Laguna Seca on January 14th and January 21st. Just towards the end of January, we've got the penultimate round of the championship, another 45-minute sprint in the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya on January 28th. And then the season finale, round 12 of Season 10 of VSR Phoenix in Suzuka. A single-hour race, one mandatory pit stop involved there. That's on February 4th, 2026. That is your fabled 5 that we've been waiting to talk about for some time here. Looking into where we currently find ourselves, it's round 7 of the championship at the end of the 2025 leg. The rest will pick up next year after Christmas and the New Year's period. So now into the discussion of today's qualifying session. Just a little under 18 minutes, so we are a little bit late to get that timer started as it stands right now. We're watching on board with JDM Grizz. Looking at the balance of performance, Nissan find themselves second best in class after Bentley. The Continental losing 13 kilos. That would be great news for the 61 of the Blue Frog, but as of right now, we don't actually see him in that paddock, so a bit of a confusing one there. Nissan, however, with 3 cars on the grid, that being the 44, the 4, and the 6, will lose 9 kilos apiece. Ferrari gaining and losing nothing here. Dead weight for the 296. No advances up the BOP or down the BOP charts. Porsche gaining 4 kilos, with BMW gaining 7, McLaren gaining 11. And that leaves Ford again on the short end of the stick. A 3 kilo difference in ballast between themselves and the 720S by McLaren. 14 kilos for the Ford Performance Mustang. Now, before we get on to the discussion of the qualifying predictions, this is going to be a rather interesting one indeed. Bizarre notion passing across the paddock at the moment, with rumours that on top of the obvious back of the grid starts expected out of today's qualifying session from the 61, who as of yet has yet to arrive at the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami, and the 420 of Regent. White Doctor, Fake Galaxy and Tyler Vermack have also joined the list of drivers potentially starting from the back of the grid. Rumours also have it pitched a few other drivers, including GTR Twiglet, might be part of this growing notion to start towards the back of the field on a slightly smaller grid today. As for the reasoning, in their words, it's Christmas, so why not? It's going to make for a very bizarre qualifying session, but getting a look at the data anyway, it would have put Fake Galaxy at the fastest time overall, a 1 minute 40.410, the only of those times to break into the 1 minute 40 mark. Tyler Vermack second with White Doctor third. Chris Davies then looks to be onto a provisional pole if the data is to be believed here, and challenging him will be the one on screen, the number 44 of JDM Grizz. The 141.975 puts him just a little under 0.3 of a second away from Davies. GTR Antion in 6th place with Timo in 7th, and he's one of 2 AM drivers to be in that top 10 with Didinho 9th. In between them, JDM Otzi in 8th place. JDM Shawnee Mac to round out that top 10, but let's see down towards the line. The first of our benchmark times here from JDM Grizz. Across the line he goes, 1 minute 42.790. The number 96 next to the line, it's GTR Twiglet. So it doesn't appear to be the case that he'll be starting towards the back. He finds himself 6/10 off on his first flying lap there. Coming towards the line, we just saw the 88, and also we do see the number 9 of Indian Goats. We saw up the road was VSR Dollar Up. Indian Goat to the line with Ferrari, second fastest by just under half a second there for the number 9 Ferrari 296. Here comes the number 6 of JDM Otzi. Now Nissan looking strong already. Leading that session is Grizz so far. We'll see exactly where that stacks up with a few other drivers still yet to make appearances on the times. Among them the 55 across the line a moment ago. Here comes Fake Galaxy to start what looks to be a flying lap. We'll see whether or not he commits to the idea that he could be starting towards the back of the field. And just to note as well, new colour scheme for the 55 there. We have seen a few different colours throughout his time, all short that has been in this championship, starting back at the Circuit of the Americas. But now we find a royal purple here for the number 55, making his way up and around. Looking at the track map here, that's out through turn 5 at Barbecue. We'll get a full track rundown over the course of the next 15.5 minutes, and by looks of it there we have right now our next time onto the charts. That was Chris Davies off by just under 0.2 of a second, 158 thousandths between himself and Grizz at the front of the pack there. A Nissan pole position could be likely on the cards if we are to believe the following out of the paddock at this time. Of course, take all of that with a huge grain of salt. Number 1 nearest to the line at the moment, just on the exit of the Crocodiles at turns 13 and 14. This is the number 1 of GTR Antion on his way down towards Cheetah Curve. This is going to be a feared section of the track throughout the race today. 2 hours of racing to follow ahead of us here in a double points round for the end of the 2025 leg of VSR Phoenix Season 10. Down towards the line then comes the Porsche. Bear in mind, decent balance of performance for them today compared to their contemporaries, but that's not enough to find him in the top 5 right now. He's off by 0.4 to JDM Otzi, and right now 935 thousandths of a second away from the fastest time so far. Indian Goat to second fastest. We see the 44 coming to the line. Can he open the taps back up here? Over a 142.790? No is the answer, simply put. Moreover, we've seen GTR Twiglet advance up into the top 5. Now we see Otzi across the line, a new Nissan onto the fastest times there. So far, a GTR 1-2, or I suppose more relevantly, a JDM 1-2 in the GTR. As for GTR themselves, Twiglet and Antion are 5th and 6th, so they comprise the 3rd row of this grid so far. Nearest to the line, the number 4. 3rd of the Nissan tier, JDM Shawnee Mac. We've already seen what Otzi and Grizz can do as an impressive start for Nissan. Let's see Shawnee Mac down towards the line here. Only to 7th place, so across the line a moment ago comes Chris Davies from 4th. Does he go up to fastest? Not too far off a shout of it. The 32 from behind him there, that's GTR Smiler. Still leading in the AM category, mind you. Nearest to the line again appears to be that number 1, and do we believe our eyes, the 61, now seemingly branded the 62, is in this lobby. So it looks like the Blue Frog will be here. We also saw join the session a little late into this qualifying session is Elite Cassie. Now he's since dropped down to 4th in the championship behind Chris Davies, otherwise VSR Chris. So he's got some work to do here as we enter the second half of the season. Of course, coming out of Australia, it was quite a mix-up around the grid. Namely, has been the case that Tyler Vermack has continued to open the taps on his championship lead, now up to 13 points between himself and White Doctor. Still very, very close, and I imagine this can go a long way considering we're at Vermack's home circuit here. He's competed under the South African flag for the entirety of his sim racing career. He is not looking to go down in front of the home crowd here in Midrand. So we'll see what the 89 is capable of. But right now, it looks like the rumors could be true that he is starting from the back of the field and reciprocating on that. Looks to be the 54 and the 55 coming in. So this is going to be a curious one, as it's going to be a very packed grid towards the back of what is currently 15 cars. Meanwhile, we've seen in their last run, Indian Goat went second fastest ahead of the number 6 of Otzi, and Grizz returns to the fastest time. So Nissan currently sandwiching a Ferrari in that top 3. Number 4 coming to the line next is Shawnee Mac. So on the topic of Nissans, here comes Shawnee Mac, who's a bronze tier sensation in his debut. So we'll see what he can do. It was a story of constant upward momentum for the number 4. We see across the line a moment ago, he stays in 9th place. He looks to be backing off there to allow what looks to be the number, looking here, 28 pass. So that's Chris Davies, 4th in the session so far, the only multiple time champion in VSR history. And he does stand upon a very hefty chance here to take a race win in this championship. It has been a long time since the number 28 has seen the front of the podium in any races, in an era that has been dominated by a handful of names over the course of the last 3 seasons. This would be really quite the morale booster for the number 28, the 2-time champion in Season 3 and Season 6, still gunning for gold this far in. A true veteran of VSR Phoenix then. Down towards, by looks of it there on the run in through the S's at turns 8 and 9. Let's catch on board with the driver just onto the line here to see if we can't get a tour of this fantastic circuit. We're on board with JDM Grizz. He makes his way down the opening straight in through the kink at turn 1 here. That slight bump to the right, down towards what is going to be our major overtaking spot in that opening lap. Crowthorne's corner here, turn 2. This very wide open hairpin left brings us up towards the Juxkay sweep. We've just seen the 55 disqualified for driving in the wrong direction. That's Fake Galaxy. So the rumors are true. There are quite a few top tier drivers backing out of this qualifying session on the advent that it's Christmas. Why not have a little bit of fun? On the exit there of Barbecue in towards turn 6 at Sunset Curve. Now this is lining our drivers up for another major overtaking spot as they rocket out from the left all the way to the right to get onto the racing line for the run in through Clubhouse. Now we've seen drivers get handsy here, side by side action down through this area of the track. We'll leave you on board with JDM Grizz. He just makes his way down through the S's. We'll be back in just a moment's time. Apologies for the interruption there. Out through, while looking at it there, turn 10 and 11 at Lurkop. Another overtaking spot. This double apex, almost parabolic open hairpin left, gives our drivers the run down through here at turn 12 at Mineshaft, flat out, and then a heavy braking zone for another major overtaking spot. That makes currently 4 so far on this track. Down at the Crocodiles, the running through turns 13 and 14. This area of the track to be feared at turn 15. This bump to the right. You can see the curbs on the inside, and then the very definite lack of room on the outside makes it a very scary corner to go through, nearly flat out for some of these drivers. Out through Ingray Curve at turn 16, down towards the line then for JDM Grizz. He drops down to second on that last lap. He was only off of his personal best by 0.005 of a second. I think it mostly owed to that sudden stutter for him on the exit of Cheetah Curve. What it has given is the rise up to pole position here with 9 minutes to spare out of Chris Davies in the number 28 BMW. Indian Goat still 3rd fastest in the session so far. The number 98 coming towards the line from a moment ago. It's Elite Cassie from 7th on the grid. The Ferrari across the line to start another flying lap here. But what we can see is even in spite of where he's found himself so far, he's going to have to try his hardest for pole position in this session, because the driver that has taken 3rd place off of him currently stacks atop the timing charts there. It's going to be a very tough one for him to come back from here in Kyalami. It is not an easy circuit by any stretch of the imagination, but I would definitely say, as far as things go here on ACC, it's a bit more on the underrated side. Not because of any some of its flaws. It is a fantastic circuit. It's just one that we don't really see get used enough. So it's brilliant to be coming back here. We have been here, I believe, a few times with VSR, most prominently, though it has been featured in other series. And it is a fantastic circuit for endurance racing, of course, owing to the fact that it has now carved its legacy past the Formula 1 era where it was the home of the South African Grand Prix and still could be in the future the home of it, with plenty of plans drawn up in the last 5 years to renovate this track to Grade 1 status and to bring back the South African Grand Prix. It's on the charts for one of the most anticipated Grand Prix returns of any venue in the history of Formula 1, and it's one that could be the most believable if we are to be seeing what we have been seeing in the last couple of years. Of course, most recently in the last week we had the announcement Portimao would be returning for 2027 and 2028, so it's not off of the charts that by the end of this decade we could see Kyalami return. But moreover, carving out past its history in Formula 1, the largest calendar event here at Kyalami is its only so far, and that is the 9 hours of Kyalami runs every single year. And it's their legacy endurance event. It's now become one of 2 major calendar events this year after the South African Rally Raid, or the South African Safari Rally as it's more formally known in the 2025 World Rally Raid Championship. Most recent one won by Henk Latergen, driver representing South Africa. Cassie across the line a moment ago, and where he has made sizable improvement, he still has a few more hundredths to carve out to be within a shot of a top 5 here. The gap between himself and GTR Twiglet, the next car up from him in 6th place, is a gap currently residing at about 61 thousandths of a second, so 6 hundredths and a single thousandth on top as the sort of cherry on this proverbial cake. Heading out of the pit lane comes Indian Goat. Now he's had a brilliant performance here in the absence of the heavy hitters. You can see it's nearly half the grid by looks of it that are not participating in this qualifying session. I've got to say, it's among the most bizarre qualifying sessions we've seen. Of course, some tracks we've seen before, a lot of drivers fail to get times on there. Namely, the Nürburgring was one such case much earlier on this season where drivers were struggling to put times on the chart. But this is all a voluntary decision by those 6 towards the back of the field region: White Doctor, Tyler Vermack, Blue Frog, Eurofighter, and Fake Galaxy. In fact, it could be more realistically 5. I don't think the 504 was clued in on this. It's been a late join for the 504. Eurofighter, otherwise known as Timo, is predicted at a top 10 appearance by qualifying data alone. And whilst we've got some time here just to quickly discuss, with about 5 minutes coming up left to go in this qualifying session, we'll stay on board with the 504 as I have some curious news. Now, of the qualifying data we were sampling in today's session, we'll just bring it back up for the sake of review and analysis here. There has been a rather interesting sign. Now, of course, with 5 rounds left in the championship after today, as we've most recently seen a move up to 2nd there for Elite Cassie to make the front row ahead of JDM Grizz and Indian Goat, now sandwiching in the Nissans and a almost Ferrari sandwich with the 98 and the number 9. Right now, from 2nd all the way down to 5th, it's Ferrari, Nissan, Ferrari, Nissan. Taking a look there at those qualifying prediction data, so looking at those lap times, we did find 2 compelling pieces of information. So, of course, with 5 rounds left to go after today, all of which set to happen after the winter break on January 7th onwards into 2026. As we see there, Cassie bringing it in with just under 5 minutes left to go. We'll catch on board now with Chris Davies. We spotted 2 drivers testing perhaps their next cars for Season 11 of VSR Phoenix. Of course, still in the hypothetical stage at the moment, but what we were able to gather is 2 such drivers, JDM Grizz and White Doctor, and it was to a mixture of successes. Now, we spotted JDM Grizz testing in the pre-race practice time sessions with Porsche, and what he did end up finding that he was about just over a 10th slower than he was in his time with Nissan. Now, this can be chalked up to beneficial balance of performance. Nissan losing 9 kilos, of course, as we've just seen there, a DSQ for Elite Cassie. In the time we were reviewing our notes just then, the fate of the number 98 has drastically changed. He joins the ranks of the drivers starting plumb last. So this is going to be a very bizarre race coming up 2 hours here in Kyalami. Most recently now, JDM Grizz has been promoted back to 2nd place on the front row. So back on the discussion we had here. As a matter of fact, let's go and catch on board with the driver we're about to talk about next. As cutting away from Grizz, who was spotted testing with Porsche, we also spotted here a mixture of results in the positive end for White Doctor. Of course, he's a mainstay for BMW. He has been a mainstay for BMW for this season so far. I believe last time we saw him in an independent choice of GT3, it was back with Aston Martin in his fight with Just Boris in Season 8 of VSR Phoenix. Right now, though, there's a very interesting story to be had because we spotted him testing with Honda and their NSX GT3 Evo. Now, had it competed in this round, it would have lost 13 kilos of weight there under the balance of performance regs, and that was good enough in the timing charts to give him the fastest Sector 3 of any one driver on this grid. That includes Vermac, that includes Fake Galaxy, and that includes his own run in his mainstay BMW M4. These are compelling signs as it's put him 35 thousandths of a second faster than his predicted time. The one that you see on the qualifying predictions today is a sum of his BMW M4 times that would have otherwise put him third place. Think that, but 35 thousandths faster for a 141.1 dead in the Honda. Could this be the early door signs that by season 11 he could make an ambitious leap over to Honda? Of course, here in ACC, in the console space at least, we've been seeing a bit of a renaissance for the unorthodox choice of vehicles. I think one such recent trend has come out of Bentley. Drivers like Blue Frog, who was the season 9 champion in the Porsche Cup era, now finds himself using the Bentley Continental, and we've seen plenty of drivers and teams alike come along to use the Continental to great success. Naming some examples right off the bat there, looking over to the NLRL Console Endurance Series, Bentley has seen consummate success week in, week out at the hands of the 788 lineup at Exclusive Esports. They currently lead the championship in a Bentley. And of course, we've seen brilliant performances by this one as well over the course of VSR Phoenix Season 10. He's not alone in that trend, as not only is it Bentley, you'd also have to take a look back through the last couple of months and you'll see definite trends out of Jaguar, Aston Martin and Lexus, with the V12 Vantage, the XKG3 and the RCF. So it does leave us in a very curious spot here. Could Honda be the next emerging trend? Of course, we've also seen the rise of a new trend here, the return of the Nissan GTR through Season 10. So could it be the sort of rise of Japanese machinery back to the top step? We've seen Nissan have some great results this season. We saw Lexus take the championship in the NLRL Sunday League at the hands of Jason Bush in Season 2. Could it be Honda's time to shine? That's the real question. In the hands of a driver like White Doctor, we've seen that he's capable across the board. Stick him in an Aston, stick him in a BMW, and he can perform. Our data set for what he can do in mid-engine machinery is limited, but what the data is telling us here in Kyalami is he's faster. Now, we don't know how long it would take for him to get times like that again right off the bat, if it's a case where you could drop him in the car and he'd implicitly be able to do that, or if it takes a little bit more time to wind up, as it were. But right now, things are getting very, very spicy on that grid. And also try not to ignore what is going on our screens at the moment. We've been watching with JDM Shawnee Mac, but further up the order, we've seen JDM Grizz back on to pole position. The number 44 now leads by 67 thousandths of a second. Indian Goat third for Ferrari. JDM Otzi in fourth with Nissan. GTR Antion in fifth with Porsche. GTR Twiglet in sixth with JDM Shawnee Mac just to the line there. Can he go faster than GTR Twiglet? Not this time around. Right now needs to make about, looking at it here, 510 thousandths of a second. That's just over half a second for him there to get up onto sixth place, to be on the third row by the end of this qualifying session. And with one more opportunity here, it looks to have come apart at the seams for the number 4. Takes a big slide out through barbecue, and that's the curtain close on the number 4 here in round 7's quali. To the line comes what looks to be the number 54. No, not the number 54, the 504 there. Eyesight not on my best side here. Timo to 8th place at the end of qualifying. Next to the line comes the number 6, JDM Otzi. Still gunning for a podium start. He's not going to be seeing anything too badly here from the second row. Toward the line, the number 62 now disqualifies himself. That's the Blue Frog. Ample to start, or I suppose Avid, I should say, to start plumb last to this grid. 16th place for the 62. Across the line, JDM Otzi finishes this qualifying session 4th. JDM Grizz, though, for Nissan in a historic first pole position for Nissan here in VSR Phoenix Season 10. What has been a very oddball qualifying session in the last race of 2025 has given us a very, very confusing grid to piece together there. Had he not disqualified himself, Elite Cassie would have still been third at the end of qualifying. Nonetheless, he'll start in 13th, so a sizable challenge coming up. We'll get a full look at that grid in due course. One article of news today, and it's a very odd one, coming from the World Rally Championship. Now, ahead of the 2027 regulations, known as the WRC 27 regulation sweep, we have the arrival of a new manufacturer, simply going by the acting name Project Rally 1. Now, we don't know if they'll be partnering with a larger manufacturer to make their car, but what we do know is between now and 2027, they'll be producing and homologating a car for use in the WRC 27 Rally 1 regulations for the 2027 World Rally Championship. So this is a very exciting time here, because this is the first time in a long time we have seen an expressed interest by privateer engineering firms. Now, I think the last time this was a prominent sign was working almost back to the 80s, as it were, in the Group B era. Very, very rarely have we seen privateer engineering firms come to the top step. Now, we had quite a recent spur of it in the last 30 or so years. The F2 kit cars were often made by privateer engineering firms. They were, as the name implies, kit cars assembled by these privateer groups based off of road-going cars, often using that as a skeleton frame. And this looks to be what is being brought into the WRC 27 regs. Now, what we do know is they're using a modified version of a Rally 2 engine, as per every manufacturer for the WRC 27 regs, and they're using a space frame chassis design. So it's going to be exciting to see where the World Rally Championship goes in the next 2 years on the advent of one of its most drastic changes in regulations we've seen since the introduction of Rally 1 back in 2022. Well, none more to discuss on that. More onto today's regs. Of course, 2 hours of racing set to follow here in Kyalami, 2 mandatory pit stops and double points up for grabs for the last race of 2025. Getting a look on this oddball grid then for round 7. It's JDM Grizz for Nissan on pole position. Chris Davies in second, with Indian Goat in third, JDM Otzi in fourth, and GTR Antion in the top 5, with GTR Twiglet just behind him there to make the third row for the GTR team. He's 6th place ahead of JDM Shawnee Mack in 7th. Eurofighter, otherwise going by Timo, is in 8th place ahead of GTR Smiler. To round out the top 10, VSR Dollar Up. And then here comes all of our drivers who abstained from qualifying in its entirety. White Doctor, who's currently in the bids to fight with Tyler Vermack for the Season 10 championship. Of course, the Season 8 champion in his time against Just Boris starts 11th on this grid, alongside his championship rival, comprising that 6th row. Tyler Vermack on his home race here, 12th place. Very bizarre decision, but one that is definitely going to make for exciting racing in the next 2 hours. Elite Cassie in 13th place alongside Regent. Fate Galaxy in 15th place, and rounding out what is that 8th row, 16th place for the number 62 now, according to the charts. We'll see if that's the whole case, as normally the number 61 of the Blue Frog, of course the Season 9 champion in the Porsche Cup era, starts plumb last here in round 7. This is going to make for a very interesting race indeed. Now, to piece together, of course, those 2 mandatory pit stops, whereabouts could we expect to see them? Well, we've seen drivers do tend to try to break up this 2-hour stint into almost a 30-minute, 1 hour to 30-minute micro stint limit here. They'll go the first 30 minutes and then pit on the hour-and-a-half mark, then all the way to the 30-minute mark, then they'll pit again. We've seen that to be one of the safest strategies round. We'll see if that's one that's committed to religiously here in Kyalami. It is a very easy track to burn your tires out on. Even though it's a little bit more grandiose in nature than some of the other tracks we've been to, it is unforgiving in terms of how it punishes those tires. Difficult to keep them in good stead here, and you'll definitely be feeling the effects of that tire wear into the latter parts of today's race. Well, we're not far from the formation lap. We'll be getting on board with the 44 in just a moment's time from pole position, as we just see there one driver disconnect from the grid, trying to piece together as to whom that was. Trying to take a look through the order. Can't yet figure out who it was there. All of the Nissans are accounted for. That's normally where we see any troubles from. But now it's the 32. It's GTR Smiler starting from last. So very, very unfortunate for him there. He starts 16th place behind the Blue Frog, who's now just been pushed up to 15th. On board then with JDM Grizz. On pole position, this is a bit of a foreign sight for Grizz. He's not seen the grid from this far up, and he's going to be leading that run down towards turn 1, up against a very formidable work of German engineering there. The BMW M4, driven by Chris Davies. We've seen him to be a very capable talent on the race start, so these two are set to give us a real gun show on the run down towards turn 2 at Crowthorne. Out through turn 1 then at the kink. Often forgotten about in the grand scheme of things here in Kyalami. Down towards Crowthorns. Now getting on boards with the 44 of JDM grids on our charts there, still VSR grids. Of course, these graphics were made towards the start of the season. We can see that it's a run uphill, so it's a bit awkward on that race start, as there's not a lot of available room to use. You will be finding yourself clinging to those inside lines there. Not a lot of chances for drivers to get side by side and stay there. It is going to be a bit of a torque fight for a lot of these cars. It is going to be the case of which engine is giving the most oomph uphill as to who gets positions in that opening sector. But on the exit of turn 5, this is where we get our next possible side-by-side chances on the run into turn 6 at sunset. It's a very dense opening 2 sections of this track, and that's pretty much complemented by a very tight, very moment-to-moment intensive area in sector 3 on the run down through Mineshaft into the Crocodiles and Cheetah all the way to Ingwe in the last corner of the track. We're down through sunset in towards Clubhouse. Now, we could see drivers get side-by-side, as we've seen it quite a few seasons ago when we last came to Kyalami, that this was the case. A lot of drivers were eyeing up a move up the inside here. Normally, you go all the way from the left, swing over to the right, back onto the racing line to get the inside line and across the apex in through turn 7. But we have seen drivers just slingshot the car out and put themselves at the inside. A risky move by all accounts, but it is possible. We've also got news there. Zetu1997 joining us from the pit lane. Late entry there for the number 12. We also got confirmation as to what the issue was for Smiler. It was a wheel disconnect for the number 32. So looking further down the grid, some of the major takeaways from what has been the most bizarre qualifying session of the season is multiple qualifying heavy hitters starting from the back, realizing that they've got 2 hours to play with. A lot of these drivers are eyeing up the chances to carve through the field. Now, we also have another article of regulation news, I should say, to discuss for this race, and that is at the time for this race, 5:04 p.m. local at this time right now, has been set to advance at 12 times its current rate. We've just seen there, pulled into one side. That's the 32. Could that be potentially more trouble for the wheel there for GTR Smiler? He re-emerges out of turn 11. Back on board then with our current front row as they make their way in through the Crocodiles. You can already see Chris Davies trying to map out in his mind how can he have a chance to run up the inside at turns 13 and then keep it by turns 14 and 15 as it loops back in on itself here. So just to remind you as well, so the time has been set to 12 times advancement. So we are going to be seeing right now, with it being 5:12 p.m. local, heading down through turn 16, it will head into night racing here in the next 2 hours. But before we get to that point, we come down towards the line here. 17 cars in all, one from the pit lane, 16 on the road, 2 abreast on the run, down towards the line here for 2 hours of racing. The final race of 2025, round 7 of VSR Phoenix Season 10. Without further ado, then, from the front of the pack, it's the Nissan from the BMW, and we are green and racing here in South Africa. A great start then from the front row, a battle on 6 cylinders, and following in their wake, another Nissan and another V6 car there, the Ferrari 296, trying to get up the inside because he is there. Looking at it, GTR Antion up the inside in the Porsche, up the inside on Otzi, trying to get the leg up there on Indian Go. What a formidable start by the Porsche. The number 1 just slots into 4th place. Meanwhile, leading the charge out through turn 5, the 44 from the 28, the number 9 holds on to 3rd. Taking a look down the line here, we can see a real crunch zone. As talking about formidable starts, get a look there. That's the 54 of White Doctor, is already in the fight inside of that top 5. He's right up to the back end of the number 6. Meanwhile, we see the number 12 is finally out through turn 5 after that pit lane start. Up the inside goes the 54. White Doctor is a man on a mission here in Kyalami, making his way down towards the S's. You can see the toe of it. That is the top 4 right up in front of him. He's already in a 5th place, no more than half the track in. That is a formidable start for a driver who is starting towards the back today. Out through Lurekop we go, turns 10 and 11, down towards the run into Mineshaft. Major takeaways from that. He's into the top 5. We can see not too far away is Elite Cassie, tucked in behind that of GTR Twiglet, making their way down through turn 12. Moreover, Nissan continues to lead, BMW 2nd, Ferrari 3rd, and Porsche 4th. Looking there, side-by-side action between Twiglet and Otzi. Not Twiglet and Otzi, sorry. Twiglet and Cassie, with Otzi just up in front. Cassie still looking for the inside of the run, down towards Ingwe curve. He's up the inside in the 98, on the 96, carries around the outside here. A little bit of oversteer, isn't going to be doing the BMW many favors, but this is a very good spot for him to have got caught up on, as in the fight, straight line Pound for pound here, BMW has got it over Ferrari, but is it long enough to really see some advantage out of it? Down towards turn 2 we go. Is the 96 and the 98 up the inside? Still watching then out through turn 6. As GTR Twiglet starts to bleed time away there. A little bit of upset for Elite Cassie as he made his way out of Sunset Curve. Meanwhile, down the line, we can start to see an advance there from Tyler Vermack and Regent, for that matter, they're 9th and 10th. Looking here, look at the scope of this. We are seeing a fight going on right now, all instead of 3rd place. White Doctor around the outside on Indian Goat. We're watching here for the point of view of GTR Antion. He tries to go for the position over the number 9 Ferrari, but can't find the room on it on the exit of Lurkop. What we have seen in the meantime then is now up to the podium positions is White Doctor. Right now we're seeing a fight for 4th, the number 9 versus the number 1 as we sweep around turn 12 up towards turn 13, trying to get later on the brakes there. The number 6, not the number 6, sorry, the number 9 holds on to his position. The number 6 advances on the number 1 in through Cheetah Curve. Meanwhile, following right behind, there's problems there for both Elite Cassie and GTR Twiglet. Both of them managed to stay facing the right way around, so good on them for that. Very rarely is it a case where drivers can recover from a huge hit down at the Cheetah Curves at turn 15. Watching here with Antion still being intercepted by Otzi. It's V6 versus Flat 6 on the run down through turn 1 in towards turn 2 at Crowthorne. Up the inside, then later on the brakes for the number 1. He's in defensive form here, trying to pursue the Ferrari just in front of him there, dangled in front of him like a carrot to a horse. The number 1 in hot pursuit of 4th place. Out through turn 5. Down towards turn 6 we go. Looking further down the road, we see here for Fake Galaxy. He's got his hands full with Vermack, Regent, and Twiglet all in company here. Side-by-side action up the road between the Ferrari and the Ford. That's Tyler Vermack and Regent on their way in towards turn 7 at Clubhouse. It's Vermack up the inside, now up to 9th place. Over, actually, sorry, 8th place, I should say, over Regent. Watching here from Fake Galaxy's point of view, it's been a bit of a slow start in the opening 5 minutes for the number 55, trying to get around the 96 of GTR Twiglet. Of course, like Elite Cassie, both of them ran into trouble down at turn 15 in that last lap just gone, so he finds himself tripping down towards 10th place, in towards Lurkop. Meanwhile, up the road, you can see there a bit of connection troubles by looks of it for Regent in the number 420. That's going to look up through the order, though, because I believe we are far from over in terms of what's going on in the front. And as you can see there, an inevitability. Dread it, run from it, but the 54 still arrives all the same. Out through turn 15, you can already see White Doctor working his magic on this grid. He started towards the back today, and in the scope of just under 10 minutes, he's found himself not only on the podium, but within a chance to lead this race. That is supreme form from the number 54. But right now, he's got 2 major obstacles to get around if he means to lead the charge here in South Africa, and it is a very hefty pair of defenders as well. The 28 of Chris Davies and the number 44 of JDM Grizz. These are not 2 drivers that are going down without a good fight here. We've seen it before that they are very capable when pressed up against it, and we'll see what they're capable of here after the indomitable stride in the last 6 minutes there from the 54. Looking down the line, we are starting to see a bit more action in towards the run of the top 10. So we see here JDM OT versus Elite Cassie, V6 versus V6, VR38 versus Ferrari. And up the inside goes the number 98, the number 6 washed out wide. Almost no competition involved on that one there. That was a clean sweep for the 98. Up and around Clubhouse at turn 7. Meanwhile, you can still see the chaptered saga of the 1 versus the number 9 in the meantime here. We are going to try and catch on board with those 2, making their way down through the S's up towards Lurkop. It's an Indian Goat versus GTR Antion. Ferrari versus Porsche. V6 versus Flat 6 in through turn 10, now through turn 11 on the run downhill. The Porsche's got the run on him. You can see further up the order, it is a concertina effect for the top 3. They are getting closer and closer and closer. It's crunch time between the 54, the 28, and the 44. Meanwhile, we see the number 1 hooks it out to the inside. Very nearly has a stab up the inside on the number 9. We know Porsche is pound for pound one of the best manufacturers when it comes to stopping power under those brakes. So he can definitely work with that over the course of the next hour and 53 minutes of racing. Meanwhile, let's get a look up in that top 3 as things are starting to liven up massively in the podium. Let's get a look on board here with JDM Grizz leading that charge, but I'd say let's get on board with one of the two BMWs involved in the ongoing fight for second. Who better to get on board with than with the driver who has really just slaughtered half the grid in his efforts to get up towards the top three, and he has done so in the span of less than 6 minutes of racing. Right now, as we just drop onto the 7th minute, this has been a remarkable day so far for White Doctor. Looking at it here, still in pursuit of Chris Davies. This is not going to be an easy fight for him, so you can already see the sun sets beyond the horizon. We are heading very swiftly into the topic of nighttime racing before the first 10 minutes are out. In towards turn 7 we go. V6 versus inline 6 and the topic of the podium. But it's a civil war amongst the Beamers as they head down in through the S's. For White Doctor, this has been clinically precise, so I suppose this is all quite apt for him. Heading in towards Leurkop. Very easy spot to look up the inside, but he's not looking to make any sloppy errors here. He's looking for only precise moves, ones that have already seen him up towards the podium. And that was really quite a terrifying sight. We were expecting it to be a little bit of a slower procession like what we've seen out of so far, out of Regent, out of Vermac, out of Fate Galaxy as well. But White Doctor says, I'm not really too interested in all of that, and just carves his way up the road there. Found a room at the inside and just slipped up into the top 5 before the real notion of the race had started to set in for most. So he had descended upon this grid like a phantom during this race so far, and we're only 10 minutes in. Actually, looking at it more realistically, it's 8.5 minutes into this race at the moment. Right now, though, that fight for second looks to be getting much, much closer with every passing lap, giving him the lights there on the exit of turn 1 out through the King, having a look at centre mass of the road to try and force an early defence. We see running out wide, though, that's the 44. This could soon be upgraded to the fight of the race lead as the 44 drops onto the nose of these warring BMWs out through turns 2 and 3 and 4 up towards turn 5. Watching here with a 54 out through turn 6 in towards turn 7. He's looking up the inside. So here goes White Doctor on Chris Davies. Very, very precise indeed. That's exactly what he's been looking for. That's the kind of form he's carried for the last 9.5 minutes there. Now up to second. It seems that his control of the race lead is all but inevitable here. It's not a case of if, but when, by most regards, of when the 54 can take the race lead here in Kyalami. Looking further down the line to see what the rest of the grid is concerned with at the moment. We are starting to see continued fighting. First, it was with Vermac, and now for Regent, he finds ample company out of another Mustang, the 55 of Fate Galaxy in pursuit of 8th place. For Vermac, he's dropped now down to 11th and is only 3/10 off the beat there from the Blue Frog in the number 62 Bentley Continental. Out through Mine Shaft in towards the Crocodiles. You can see there he's not going to be fooled by such an easy gap to be leaving open there through turn 13. Great defense so far. We see side-by-side action down the line, as a matter of fact, between Vermac and the 62. Formerly the 61 of the Blue Frog. We see trouble for him on the exit there of Cheetah Curve, so this could be the opportunity for Vermac. Also, we can start to piece together what's gone on from there. Diving to the pit lane goes the 62. The Blue Frog is in. Of course, 2 mandatory pit stops to serve, so this could be a bit of a desperate lunge to the pits, but it will be playing into his hands in terms of strategy for this first half of the race. So into the pits then goes the 62. Doesn't appear to be too much damage at all, rather superficial damage for the 62, but something clearly awry. We see in terms of damage as well, Zetu 1997 in big trouble as we just cut on board with the number 12. Started from the pit lane today, and after 11 minutes of racing finds himself still in plumb last so far, but is about to take 16th place. Looking around the grid, we're starting to see a fight start to form up here, not only for the race lead between White Doctor and JDM Grizz, but looking further down the line, there is an ongoing fight between the 2 Ferraris. Now we're talking here for 4th place between Elite Cassie and Indian Goat, the number 9 versus the number 98. You can see here it's been a very easy run for him out of Luakop, so he could tie this one up in a nice neat bow before we've even had the opportunity to get the graphics up on screen. That's how quick this one's been working. The number 98 out round turn 12 and will hold the inside into turn 13. He's going to force Indian Goat to run the long way around town if he wants to try and take the position back. But as we see there earlier on the brakes to get a more aggressive line through turns 13 and 14, now through turn 15. This has been a great comeback fight here for Indian Goat. Now at the back of the top 5, but not by too far a distance. He'll be in the slipstream generated by the 98 after the exit of Ingwe curve on the run in towards turns 1 and 2 onto the run of lap 7. These two have put on one hell of a show for Ferrari so far. Bear in mind, just under 15 minutes into this race, we're seeing here a three-way fight. Regent, Fake Galaxy and Tyler Vermack. Now, it was once one Mustang chasing that Ferrari. Now it is two. And we see there looking up the inside. He's got the run of it. Straight line speed firmly in the hands of the Ford Motor Company. The Ferrari having a little bit of a jitter there. It looks like some side-by-side contact up through turn 2. Very difficult for the two Fords to keep track of where the Ferrari will be, because as you can see there, the connection is very fragile for the 420. That could lead to a desync related incident in the near future. What it has allowed though is for a move there, a switch back to get himself side by side, but he'll be pinned in behind the 296 as now Tyler Vermack tries to challenge around the outside on his championship rival. Actually not his championship rival, that would confuse that with the 54. That's Fake Galaxy in the 55 there. Had it been an earlier entry to the season, I'd have no doubts in my mind this would have been a championship rival. So I'm a mistake there, the 55. Bit wishful thinking, I'd say, for such an early entrant. Otherwise, though, he has definitely shown up into this championship with the makings of a champion in his DNA. I would say going into season 11, if he commits to a full-time drive, definitely could be a championship rival. More on that later on, though. Tyler Vermack now pinned in at the back of the top 10 at the moment, with Fake Galaxy holding on to 9th, Regent in 8th. Let's get a look up through the order here as we are starting to see a proper fight for the first place there, but cutting over through Cheetah Curve and bounced off track was White Doctor, now down to 3rd place. Get a look at this on the replay here. This is going to be something a lot of the drivers will be looking out for throughout today's race. We mentioned it in passing earlier, but that curve up the inside, especially in nighttime racing, is very difficult to gauge from inside the car, and this is going to be a common issue. We already saw it earlier for Elite Cassie and GTR Twiglet. Now we see it strike that of White Doctor, forces him down to the back of the podium and with a decent bit of breathing space between himself and the car up in 2nd place. In the pits at the moment, Fake Galaxy in on an early pit stop run. We'll see if there's damage, and yes, there is for Fake Galaxy. So in the time we were covering the incident for White Doctor, the 55 has now run into trouble. Into the pit lane, our 2nd pit entrant today then in this race, just under 15 minutes in, is Fake Galaxy in the number 55. As for Vermack, he'll inherit 9th place. And by the scope of the damage on that 55, I'm pretty sure he's inherited 9th place well before the 55 was into the pit lane. Right now, still cooped up behind that of Regent, still holding on to 8th place, but as you can see, the ambition's clear in his mind for an advance to 7th. Meanwhile, in the background here, in the discussion of fights on the grid, getting back on board with our drivers inside of the top 5. Just cutting away there from Oatsy as we get on board with White Doctor. You can see already having cut his way up through Indian Goat and now up through GTR Antion has made very quick work of those two. Now into 4th behind White Doctor. That's Elite Cassie. As far as the scope of it goes right now, just after 15 minutes of racing, JDM Grizz continues to lead in Kyalami in the 2 hours of racing here in the final leg of the 2025 journey of Season 10 of VSR Phoenix. Chris Davies in 2nd, White Doctor down to 3rd after his incident at the Cheetah Curves, and intercepting him there by looks of it, the 98 of Elite Cassie in 4th place. Great hustle from both of those two, by the way, who started towards the back of the field today. GTR Antion in 5th place, and just behind him we see their Indian Goat in the number 9 Ferrari. JDM Oatsy in 7th, Tyler Vermack not too far away from him in 8th place. Regent 9th, as we see there, having dropped down a peg in the last time we saw these two. And in 10th place at the moment is GTR Twiglet. JDM Shawnee Mack in 11th with GTR Smiler in 12th. Eurofighter, otherwise Timo, in 13th place. And VSR Dollar up in 14th. Zetu up to 15th there as Blue Frog early pit stop is in 16th so far. And at the back of the grid right now, taking emergency repairs, Fake Galaxy in 17th place. Watching back on board here with the fight on the podium, Chris Davies forced to defend for second for the second time around. Now, will the number 54 of White Doctor be so lucky this time around to get up on the inside of the 28? I don't think he'll be looking to get fooled again out through turns 10 and 11. We'll stay on board with Chris Davies. Otherwise, VSR Chris on his run out through Lurekop down towards Mineshaft. Looming in the distance, that bright fluorescent green 44, the Nissan of JDM Grizz. Out through turn 15 we go. You can see all drivers now looking to religiously avoid getting too close to the inside line. It's a necessary evil for them to trim maybe a few hundredths, if not a few tenths, off of their lap times per lap, just to avoid the major issue of running into that flat out and taking yourself nearly out of the race. As we see there for the 54, he got out quite lucky with it all, just dropping one position in his efforts to pursue for first. You can see super late on the brakes though. It's constant pressure by White Doctor. This is the exact same strategy he employed against Just Boris throughout his championship fight back in season, looking back to it now, season 8. This is two championship drivers going head to head here. This is really quite a sight to behold. These are two experienced drivers now in VSR Phoenix, really toying with each other, sparring as it were under the stars in Midrand, South Africa. Down through to turn 7 we go then. And of course, taking a look back to those championships, you can see where they picked up their mantle. For White Doctor, season 8 of course, but for VSR Chris, otherwise Chris Davies, it's 2 times. First in season 3 and then in season 6. And the number 28 now has become more of a fabled number here in VSR Phoenix, an iconic number up there with the likes of the 999. I'd say as well, having a stab, the 982 and the 77 are ones that definitely do spring to mind. Synonymous with Funky Fish and Pete, with the first 2 ever champions in VSR's opening seasons. Down towards turn 13 we go then at the Crocodiles. Very late on the brakes there. That is a constant factor to consider here with the 54. He's going very aggressive on the brakes. He's got that car geared up for a much more aggressive run in the braking zones. He's willing to take that extra risk. The question therein remains, is he liable to experience any brake fade on a 2-hour-long race here with the intensity he's already been performing at? It's unlikely. It does take quite some time for the brakes to wear out in ACC, but never say never on the possibility of that. Bear in mind, his continued struggle to get around the 28 has invited in Elite Cassie, who was faster than him on the last lap just gone, to come and have a go for a potential podium fight. Bear in mind, continued struggles out through the Crowthorne corner at turn 2 for that leading 44 is creating a bit of a traffic snake almost in the top 5. It backs up the 28 onto the 54, onto the 98. And if any of these 3 run into issues, next to hear about it will be that number 1 down in 5th place, GTR Antion with Porsche. Speaking of Antion though, let's see if we can go and catch on board with that Porsche, because he's not exactly alone in this end of the race. We can see from behind him there, big slide by looks of it, if we just caught on there with the number 9 of Indian Goat. Then behind them we can see JDM Otzi and Tyler Vermack looking to get into arms for a fight of 7th place on the field. Let's get back on board though with our fight inside the top 3. Now from the leader's point of view, JDM Grizz still has the world's weight upon his shoulders, and he has made a very, very solid start, all things considered. It was a very risky look of things down in towards turn 2. But he held his nerve. He didn't crack under the pressure. It's been ice cold for him so far. You really can't argue with what has already been done in the opening 20 minutes of this 2-hour race. He has held these 2 off rather eloquently. Down through Crocodiles, we see the BMWs are gaining ground quite significantly through sector 3, but it all bleeds away from them in that middle sector so far. Down towards turn 16 we go then. This is where the closest sort of action can happen. After that run through Cheetahs, a good run out of there can give drivers a leg up the inside. Rare, but definitely easy to do in these 2 drivers' case, especially for that 54. He's been trailing for some time. I'm sure he is sizing up the 28 on his run into the next heavy braking zone. Down towards turn 2 we go then at Crowthorns. This is an area of the track we've mentioned before. The 44 is taking a very bizarre line at, but right now it's, yeah, definitely odd, but not ineffective. He is actually gaining time on his run out of Crowthorns. Then by the time he gets out of Barbecue, he's gained a few tenths. So there is yet method to the madness for the number 44 of JDM Grizz. And really, it's the case right now. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Out through Sunset we go then in towards Clubhouse. That's where the BMWs can either gain or lose significant chunks of time right now. Out through turn 7 we go, in towards turn 8, 9. Right now, it seems to be the case that bouncing off of one another's presence on the track, the 28 and the 54 can't make head or tail from it. They now lose time out again to the 44. They're more focused on each other here, and they're sort of a double negative in this case, where they are finding themselves actually losing out more time being in each other's presence, trying to counter one another. And as you can see there, that's proof in the pudding, because up now by nearly 8/10 from these two goes JDM Grizz. He's got the very easy lay of the land here. Those two too focused on one another to see what is right in front of them. Hiding in plain sight then, as it were. A silent lead for the 44. We see running out majorly wide there. Look to be the 54. Now drops in behind Elite Cassie. So for White Doctor, he may have cooked the car out a little too early. Moreover, we do see recent troubles for the 96. Trouble out of Lurkop there for GTR Twiglet. Now drops in behind Shawnee Mac into 11th place. For Chris Davies, he's now found a new adversary chasing in his rearview mirror, that being the Ferrari number 98 of Elite Cassie, who, like White Doctor, started towards the back of the field today, was one of several drivers to abstain from qualifying under the auspice that, in their quotes, it's Christmas, so why not? And seemingly the Christmas strategy might be one worth taking here in Kyalami, because it catches the rest of the grid off guard. It certainly has caught these two off guard. They're trying to focus into a world of their own, but they've had constant pressure from behind. You got to hand it, though, to Chris Davies. He is not the kind of driver to break too easy. He's a veteran of the series, so he's seen his fair share of fights. He's seen his fair share of wins, his fair share of losses. So he is no stranger to what has been going on behind him so far. He is not broke under the pressure so far, and we're nearly, by the looks of it there, 25 minutes into the race. So it's so far so good, nearly 30 minutes in. And after that first 30 minutes, we'll take a look at the standings again. Right now, though, for Davies, it's been stern defense of second place. Still sizing up his chances, whether or not he can get the 44 under strategy. We know he's got the consistency. The question is, does the car match the driver? Heading down towards turn 12, we are starting to see that re-emergence of the fight of second place, forced into another defensive situation for VSR Chris, otherwise Chris Davies, on the grid in the 28 BMW, is now pursuing from behind comes the 98 of Elite Cassie. Let's cut away quickly from the 28's point of view to see if we can go and catch on with the attacker's point of view. On board now with the likes of Elite Cassie. Up the inside he goes then through Ingray Curve. We said it was rare and not impossible, and we saw just now was a silky smooth move there up out of Cheetah. Let's get a look on the replays for that one. Out through Cheetah. Just having a better run of it. Slingshot engaged for him. He held the left-hand side, cut up the inside there. That was very nice, neat and tidy from the 98. Took advantage of the momentum he was carrying. Now, that's a very similar thing that we were expecting to see in this race later down the line on the run out of turn 6 in towards turn 7 at Clubhouse. For Elite Cassie, though, he's now up to second place, 1.1 seconds clear of Chris Davies. So he has not only got up and around that BMW, but he's dropped him in the process of doing so. For Cassie, he's now in pursuit of JDM Grizz. To get a look back through those previous race wins, Cassie was last a race winner in Great Britain at round 2 of the championship in Brands Hatch. So it's been a 4-race win drought for the 98 so far. And he's in pursuit of it. Steadfast there. He's closing the gap down at a rate of knots, half a second, and closing from the 44. We'll catch on with these two in a moment's time. Taking a look around the grid, we see Antion fighting with Vermack, who has now slipped his way to the top 5 over the number 1 Porsche. Staying here out through the S's on the run up towards Lurkop. From behind him, Region now up and around that of Indian Goat. The two Ferraris head-to-head for 8th place. And that's been mostly because of an incident for the number 9 there. It was a temporary rolling white flag between the pair. Down through turn 12 we go, and the Ford has just completely broken away from the Porsche here. For Antion, his hopes do lie solely in Sector 3 to keep distance here with Vermack, because by the time we get to that opening straight, it will be a done deal for the number 89. Out towards Ingray Curve, staying close. Could be a strategy race coming up not far from now. Vermack up to 5th. Getting a look back on board with our leading pair here as things start to close in further and further in towards turn 2 at Crowthorns. Heading down through turn 3 and 4, I suppose more relevantly up turns 3 and 4 through the Juxkay sweep into Barbecue. It has already been remarkably close today between these two. You see, giving him the lights, trying to implement some of those early doors warnings there, that psychological warfare that we've come to associate with Elite Cassie and many drivers like him. They go for this elbows out approach here, try and get in the driver's head and then break them from the inside before we can get a move solidified. And we can see a little bit of that pressure starting to get to the 44. What has so far been a steadfast, iron-willed performance of the 44 today, we are starting to see, perhaps is it the car braking before the man? And out through the S's we go up towards turns 10 and 11. So far, so good. And now it looks to be at the front of the pack here, a battle of the V6s up the inside through turn 10. We'll hold the inside out through turn 11. The question there remains, does he have the mantle over the VR38 DETT V6 under the bonnet of the leading Nissan? No, is the simple answer. Nissan produced an absolute nuke when they made the VR38, and today it is no exemption. It's in through the crocodiles where the Ferrari next has its chances, but both of them snip momentum in their efforts not to collide. Out through turn 15 we go then through Cheetah, a little bit of a run out wide. We can see trying to cover off that move again. He saw how it worked earlier for Chris. He did not want it to happen to him as well. Now on the exit of Ingwe, this could be where it all starts to sum up for that Ferrari. Now religiously committed to the slipstream, trying to cut the toe off of him there, swerving down towards the kink. He can't do that too many times. There could be the risk of an investigation, so he holds off in towards turn 2. But you can see the pangs of desperation now starting to manifest in the 44. Out through turn 2, now up through turns 3 and 4. Meanwhile, let's get a look on board with that Ferrari in the fight. Meanwhile, just out back as well, the two BMWs are head-to-head here. Into the pits comes Regent. Back on board now with the Ferrari in the fight for the race lead. We watched for some time with the Nissan. Let's get the attacking point of view as we're on board with Elite Cassie. We saw his move up to second. Could we be seeing in the next couple of laps here a move up to the race lead? Only time will tell. He's in the fight for first. Bear in mind, not alone in this company as well, as two cars right behind him there are the remainders of the podium. Chris Davies and their White Doctor right behind him by less than 0.4 of a second. Out through the S's we go then, V6 versus V6, and then on the row behind them, inline 6 versus inline 6. The only time we advance past 6 cylinders is at the back of the top 5 there. 5.4 litre V8 in Tyler for Max, number 89 Mustang. Number 420 has a stop-go 30-second penalty, so for Regent, it was a little too fast into the pits on his first pit stop run of 2 today, and it's a stop-go 30, quickly snipping off any chances for him to advance up into a solid position in this early stage of the race. Meanwhile, the number 9 has been towed to the pit lane, and Indian Go is out of round 7. All the meanwhile, we see here what is potentially the stepping stones towards a move into the lead of this race. We see the 44 bringing up the act once more, swerving to try and cut any ounce of slipstream away from the 98. Out through turn 1, in towards turn 2 we go. In the background, we can see the two BMWs getting closer and closer to one another. Looking up the inside, just out back of them there, on board with these two, up the inside, goes White Doctor on Chris Davies. Davies down to 4th, Doctor up to 3rd. Back on board with the Ferrari in the fight for the race lead. Back on board with Elite Cassie. Round turn 6. Could it be the fabled move that we've been waiting for on the exit of Sunset? Looking to hold momentum to the left. He's going to stay over to the right, so he's just not close enough to be making that kind of a move up through turn 7. It is a bit of a desperate one. We have seen it implemented before to limited success, but it's not impossible to do. Out through the S's we go. A little bit of a bump there on the left-hand side. This area of the track, a little bit unkind to the GT3s because those curves do really just appear suddenly. Starts as a more flat area and then really does kick the suspension up to its limits there. Can easily cause a spin out, and I believe that might be what happened not too long ago to that number 9 Ferrari. Down towards Mineshaft. Now to bring this into your minds now, less than a second away is White Doctor in 3rd place, and then just about a second behind White Doctor is Chris Davies in the BMW. So we've just seen there, apologies for the interruption, back into the pit lane goes another Ferrari. This time is Elite Cassie taking the early plunge to the pits. He knows he can possibly get the 44 under strategy. So now half an hour into the 2 hours of Kyalami here in round 7 of VSR Phoenix Season 10. It has once again been clear and green for the green 44. JDM Grizz still leads the charge here. White Doctor second, Chris Davies third, and GTR Antion now to fourth place, Otzi in fifth. We've seen a myriad of pit stop runs there. Among them has been for Tyler Vermack, Fate Galaxy, Regent, the Blue Frog, GTR Twiglet, and now most recently Elite Cassie into the pit lane. He makes his way out, but let's take a look around track here for where our nearest fights could be coming from. We'd be looking back towards the podium here with JDM Grizz still leading the charge over half an hour in. So it's not been a fluke in qualifying. He has been able to deliver on a serious result with Nissan so far. Out through turns 10 and 11. We've seen from behind as well, the BMWs are starting to advance on one another once again, so there could be that moment of rebuttal coming up from Chris Davies over White Doctor, most recently up to second place on his move around. You can see a bump there through Cheetah. That's the second time today for him, and that is his early sign to head into the pit lane. So in goes the 54. Very short run into it. You can see what caught Regent out not too long ago. It's a very, very short run from the sort of start of the lane to where the pit limit lines are. Into the pit lane comes the 54. Was the question though, was that too fast for the 54? Only time will tell. We'll check in on him a little later on. What it has given though is breathing space once again to the 28 and the 44. It's been a massive weight released from their shoulders. A lot more has had to have been done for the drivers to come along and challenging them throughout this race than these two have had to do so far. So they can go that extra mile under strategy. But what we are already seeing is what we were talking about a little earlier on in today's race, was the idea a lot of drivers are going to play things safe for 2 mandatory pit stops over 2 hours. They'll pit in the first 30 minutes, they'll give it another hour, and then when there's 30 minutes left in the race, you'll see those second run of pit stops. I pray to be correct on that assertion, because the 54 is on his way out, and as far as you or I are led to be believing so far, no speeding penalty there. It was very quick, but not quick enough to bring any kind of attention out of the stewards. The 98 up and ahead of White Doctor, so under strategy things have worked out nice and peachy there for Elite Cassie. Now bear in mind, he does have to deal with him being a lot closer than he was before they ran into the pit lane. Out through Sunset we go. Right now, both of them still trying to bed heat into those tires. It's not going to be particularly easy, as still just about 35 minutes into this race. We are now firmly into nighttime. It's about, in-game at least, 8 minutes past midnight in local time. Question there and remains with an hour and 25 minutes. Could we be seeing the sunrise over Kyalami by the time the checkered flag comes out? That's another question entirely. We'll catch on with that towards the end of the race today. Right now, we're still focused in on this potential fight for second place. Not second, seventh place, my mistake there, between Elite Cassie and White Doctor. Meanwhile, Regent's still in the pit lane there, or at least comes into the pit lane. The 420 makes his way in after turn 15. And so I'm told it could be a potential DNF for the 420, as he has now disappeared from the rankings. We'll no doubt then see him in our Twitch chat if we are to believe the following. But that could have just been an early end of the road there. And in the final race of 2025, a bit of a bitter note to end the year on for that of Regent. Definitely went with a gamble, and this time around it's caught him by the backside. You see here a potential fight for 11th. Blue Frog versus Twiglet. Both of these, of course, having taken their first pit stop. So they're in for the long run before the half-hour mark towards the end of this race, before we'll next see them into the pit lane. So these two will be staying pretty close to one another if we're to believe the following. Meanwhile, looking around the track in terms of close-by fights, the 98 and the 54 still very, very close to one another. That's for 7th place at the moment. provisionally they'd be looking at second under strategy right now. Of course, still a lot to be written there. The 44 is in and the 28 follows. So the leading pair of JDM Grizz and Chris Davies are into the pit lane. Rolling in unison here. We'll see what the 28 and the 44 are going to do under strategy. Bear in mind, as far as we've been led to believe, it's a very short stop strategy for a lot of drivers here. Not a lot of time spent in that pit box. So the 28 in. It's not going to take them particularly long here either. So this to take new tires on and some new fuel. That's about 20 seconds of time spent stopped. We'll catch on with them later on. Right now, what it has invited is a new string of drivers into the lead of this race, and it's 2 in total to make up that new front row for the time being. GTR Antion versus JDM Otzi. Still a story on 6 cylinders here, flat 6 VV6, with Porsche leading, Nissan trailing. Shawnee Mac makes third at the moment. We go back on board with White Doctor and Elite Cassie. The two continuing down the line there. Grizz emerging just alongside them. As you can see there, the Nissan in the foreground, but these two still completely lasered in on one another as they now roll up towards 4th place by looks of it there. And that's Eurofighter. Trying to catch on board then with the 98 Ferrari. Elite Cassie in pursuit of Eurofighter, otherwise Timo. This is for 4th place on track, and he's made this one a very easy start. How can he wrap things up towards the end of it? We're back on board with Cassie once again. He and several drivers on this very ambitious strategy in qualifying have made a very exciting watch throughout this race. And we can see they're coming up the inside. It's the Fable move we've been waiting for. Up the inside in the background went White Doctor up and around Eurofighter like he was standing still. The 54 over the 504 as we head down into the S's. Looking here with the newfound leading pair. We also see trouble in the background. That's the 504. Yellow flags out for Eurofighter down at the S's. We see here the 28 emerges in the fight. Fake Galaxy a lap down in 13th place, trying to unlap himself from these two, the former leading pair. Could they return to the front row under strategy? Right now they find themselves tucked in behind Elite Cassie and White Doctor on a much earlier pit stop run. It's not paid dividends to the 44 and the 28 so far. We are looking at a potential new leading pair heralding its arrival. Could be the 98 of Elite Cassie. We're back into green flag conditions as of right now, out through Ingwe Curve. These two continuing their saga up the order. Bear in mind, with better straight line speed than the pair of them, the 55 could be looking at an opportunity to unlap through turns 1 and 2. So we see there, Fake Galaxy holds it out to the left-hand side. He's trying to unlap himself, but is going to back out of it. Doesn't want to leap into a pit. Not into a pit, leap into an overtake to unlap himself, knowing that that's not as important as the fight going on in front of him. So they do have to play things very close to the chest in terms of where they find themselves on track. And for Fake Galaxy, he finds himself down in 13th so far. Looking back on what is going to potentially be the new front row then, the 98 and the 54, Elite Cassie and White Doctor. Now, one driver who won't be particularly chuffed with where things have gone so far is going to be Tyler Vermack in the 89. He finds himself not too far down the line at the moment, set to make a move up towards what could be 8th place. In fact, seeing further down the line, I believe, yes, he is in 8th place. So as of right now, these drivers will shift up, by looks of it, 3 extra positions. We can already see into the pits goes Antion. Otzi stays out. Shawnee Mac, no current information as to what's going on there for the number 4. We're about to catch him out through the crocodile, so let's see if he goes into the pit lane. Right now, Otzi stays out. Nissan were on a very good start to the race, but strategy has not been to their aid. Into the pit lane comes the number 4 of Shawnee Mac earlier on the brakes. They're taking things nice and safe from 3rd. We see Elite Cassie and White Doctor both take the leap out through Cheetah Curve at turn 15. And what it does give is a move up and around the outside for the 54. And then looking for a switchback. Very violent re-entry to this fight here as Elite Cassie, frustrated by the easy mistake that he's made there, has now come into this both arms swinging with the 54 now in front of him. Bear in mind, both of those drivers made the same mistake there, but the stability for the BMW really showing its true colors. The 54 was able to almost tank it by comparison to the Ferrari. A lot more reaction was required by the 98 to keep him from spinning out. Behind him there, we are starting to see a very close fight erupt between Chris Davies and JDM Grizz. This is for 4th place at the moment. Soon to be for a podium position when we consider JDM Otzi has still yet to come in. Meanwhile, of course, there is always that presence out of Fate Galaxy. Now, the reason he's down in towards 12th place at the moment on this grid is the fact that he had that sizable damage. It was a very, very early pit stop for him, and he's going to be playing for the long game here towards the end of round 7. So with an hour and just under 19 minutes left to go in this race, not far from the halfway mark. It has been a very chaotic opening hour for quite a few drivers, and for a lot it has been maybe the sour note they weren't expecting to end 2025 on. For a lot of drivers though, this could get very, very juicy. JDM Otzi is into the pit lane. That's another Nissan, and the last of the 3 Nissans is in. So a valiant effort there in the opening half, and on his first stint for that number 6. And now we're about to see the exchange of the lead take place out through turn 15. The 54 trailing behind him there in the 98. Neither of them making that same mistake again on the run down towards Ingwe. Down towards turn 2 we go then. White Doctor into the lead. Elite Cassie in 2nd place. JDM Grizz in 3rd with Chris Davies in 4th. Tyler Vermack in the top 5. It's not the greatest news for it at the moment for Vermack. He does find himself, of course, at the back of that top 5 with his championship rivals up in front of him there. White Doctor leading that charge, and with the way that the points are being distributed at the moment, he could lose the championship lead heading into 2026. So he'll be on a bit of a revenge drive for those last 5 rounds, and to bring back up where we'll be in those next 5 rounds. Looking at the second half of the calendar after the winter break through December 18th to January 6th, we'll return to Season 10 at Round 8 at the Red Bull Ring. So where better to lay claim to the fight of the championship than in one of the most chaotic tracks in the ACC lineup. Can see he's not too far away at all from that fight just up in front of him. The 55 actually probably the most proactive in this fight, and this is just in an effort to unlap himself. Fate Galaxy is racing for this almost as if it's for position, when in reality all it is just to get himself a lap up. Looking up in front, we can still see fighting going on there for Elite Cassie over White Doctor, but it does seem that Kyalami might be just slightly front engine biased with its abundance of curbs and what looks to be a little bit more stability to the aid of the BMW. The Ferrari, we've seen it flake out just a few times in today's race. Both of these drivers have had their fair share of troubles, but seemingly emerging better off over the other is White Doctor, currently in the lead of this race. Now, taking a look, if he is to win this race from where he's at the moment, he'd be looking right now at least at his 4th race win this season. So you can't deny what has been a brilliant season so far for him. He's still 2nd in the championship, only off by 13 points to Tyler Vermack, currently in the lead. And he extended that up from what was, I believe, an 8-point margin heading into Australia in round 6 at Bathurst. Speaking of Tyler Vermack, he is now in very, very close proximity to a fight for position with Chris Davies. Bear in mind, he's now got shadowing him there, the 55. So let's see if we can go and catch on board. There's the 55, and there's the 89. Tyler Vermack runs a little wide there through Sunset in towards Clubhouse at turn 7. On board so far with Tyler Vermack in the number 89. Now, I believe, thinking back to some conversations he's had with us in the past, the reasoning behind his move to the 89 and to this brand new color scheme is he sort of wanted to go in his own direction for a little bit here in VSR. It's more of an expression of individualism over his representation of his wider connections to the exclusive esports team. Bear in mind, he had a decent weekend in Silverstone. Moreover, in his entry to the 791 alongside Fabio Farr, he had one hell of a run in Bathurst with the exclusive esports team. Took Porsche's first ever victory in the console endurance series. So now standing by his lonesome at his home track, the 89's doing a pretty admirable job considering he and many others have started toward the back. Again, it still makes for one of the most bizarre grids I think I've seen in a long old time here on TRTN. I've not really seen so many drivers consistently commit to this bit. As for Regent, though, we did end up hearing word off of him in our Twitch chat. And in blunt, he put that he can't be bothered to drive around with 15 people for 2 hours. That is a very bizarre statement. Oh, never mind. Into the wall goes Tyler Vermack. Big slip there on the exit of turn 5. Get a look at this on the replay. Caught a little bit of the grass. We'll discuss the point later on, but here out of turn 5 in his pursuit to the 28, runs a little out wide. You can see his efforts to try and rein the car back in, but by the time all 4 wheels glided across the grass and gravel there to his right-hand side, he was but a mere passenger to the fate he had sealed himself into. On the exit of turn 5 there, just about there was the cut-off point. But from that point onwards, era in God's hands. Vermack, he drops down quite a lot of time away from Antion. Still maintains 5th, but he's only off by 6.5 seconds. Now, this gap, considering the amount of damage on the 89, is only going to continue to grow, and we see it nearly up to 7 seconds before we've even come to the exit of Luakop. So for Tyler Vermack, he has found himself with a stroke of bad luck in the last 10 minutes or so here. And this could be the sign for a very early second pit stop. Now, the question remains for the Ford. Yes, it is one of the newest cars in the game, meaning you could realistically make the expectation that its engine is a little bit more on the fuel efficient side. Vermack stays out, so I am quite baffled by that one. He seems to think the damage is not too severe to where he can maybe keep the car running on track for maybe another 12 or so minutes. We do know the car can definitively do a full hour on a full tank, so I think that maybe is the mark he's aiming for. He's looking for security over hesitance. He doesn't want to come into the pits too early because he'll know he'll have to do it again with just how juicy the engine is for fuel. Yes, it's one of the newer models, but we are still talking a 5.4 litre naturally aspirated V8 engine. Now, that doesn't scream fuel economy to me. No American engine ever has. This is the same country that made an 8.4 litre V10 to fit under the nose of a car the size of a Corvette. That doesn't scream opulent excess. I really don't know what does. Looking around the grid then to see where the rest of the field is concerned with so far. Elite Cassie in the lead. White Doctor second. JDM Grizz has broken away from Chris Davies here to solidify what is the back of the podium at the moment. Now he'll be lamenting what has been of it so far. But really having a look at the performance those two have brought to the table, it was an inevitability that they would catch up. I wasn't expecting for one in that opening hour for the 54 to close in with such vigor in his opening drive there. White Doctor descended upon them like a phantom. It was brutal to see. Moreover, just getting a quick look, speaking of White Doctor, he is not too far off a stab of being in the race lead. A big stab of oversteer there, and he kept it from the tyre wall. Great car control. Let's get a look at that one. We've not been at shortage here for available replays, as we cut away, I believe, from that of JDM Grizz. We watched here with White Doctor down towards, and at this point here, car steps out, bam, snaps in the opposite direction, very nearly put him in the tyre wall. That is a sketchy one indeed for White Doctor, but fortunately, he's only trimmed away about 6/10 on the gap that he had away from Elite Cassie, so all is not yet lost in his efforts to take the race lead here. Cassie leads 1.3 seconds up. Fake Galaxy still pressuring Chris Davies from behind here. And you can see he's really adamant to get up the inside and unlap himself. I think at this point, with Davies being 2.2 seconds away from Grizz, he's starting to get a little bit fed up of having the 55 on his trails here. I don't doubt that he'll probably just end up making the 55 run around him on the exit here at Clubhouse. This has got to really be grinding his gears here. Now, bear in mind, he's of no liberty to let the 55 pass. He doesn't have to under the regulations. But I imagine he might just end up doing that out of sheer frustration, because you can see the 55 isn't actually wasting much time here. It's very enthusiastic from Fake Galaxy, and with every reason to be. He knows he has the pace to contend for higher positions, but right now, being stuck in behind the top 4, down a lap in 11th place with the damages he's had. Bear in mind, he's already up the road from Eurofighter. He's already up the road from Dollar Up. He knows he can make a top 10 position. His end of the pits right now is Tyler Vermack. down through Ingwe Curve. I'm sure if he is able to keep pace with the number 28, that Fate Galaxy could actually find his way to unlap here. I don't expect much fight back from the 28. Now, of course, it is not going to be playing particularly nicely into his hands in terms of the grand scheme of things. It is going to force a wedge here between himself and the rest of the field. Moreover, he has now found himself caught very firmly between a rock and a hard place, because now Tyler Vermack will not want to let that 28 through, but he knows he's going to have to at some point. Moreover, that's going to invite the 55 right into that fight of 10th place. So this is a very tough call. This is some 4D chess we're seeing between these three on two separate lengths of the race. Fate Galaxy has got the best possible chance here to contend with Vermack, who's been forced into an area of compromise. He's taken his second mandatory pit stop on an emergency basis. You can see from behind that 55, you can smell blood in the water. He's hunting down the 89, but the 28's in his way. The 28 doesn't have to let him by. The 89, in theory, does have to let the 28 by, but that's if the 28 can catch him. The 55 again looking up the inside. This is really quite bizarre stuff indeed. Looking up through the order, Elite Cassie has not just taken the lead of this race, he has started to solidify it here. He's up over a second away from White Doctor. Bear in mind, these two still on the charts here to take their second mandatory pit stop, but that's under theory alone at least expected in the next 30 or so minutes. So any moves before that point are definitely unexpected in nature. We watch here with the 55. Fate Galaxy is in a very frustrating part of this race so far. He's been able to reel Vermack back in. He's had quite a solid bit of pace here. He's got the fastest lap of any driver, a 140.825. He knows he has the pace for it, but by nature of the fact that the BMW on a straight just short enough to see them have enough advantage over Ford, he's stuck in frustratingly behind that 28. And this isn't a case as well, like in some other battles we've seen, where they can tow onto the line of a faster driver. Fate Galaxy knows, he's confident that he's the faster driver here, but by nature of the fact that he's not got many overtaking opportunities that wouldn't result in a potential risk of some side-by-side action, of which he would be almost immediately liable for under any kind of post-race investigation. He's stuck in one of the most awkward spots here, staring up ahead at the position that could be his, but by nature of the fact the 28's there and reluctant to let him pass is not going to be doing him any favors, because he's got his own battles to worry about. They're stuck in stalemate out through turn 8 and 9. As for the 98, let's just quickly catch back on board with that leading pair. We go and look on board here. The 54 has started to reel in the 98. Elite Cassie, once at 1.3 seconds over White Doctor, now on this lap has come down to half of that distance, 0.5 of a second, as they make their way into Crocodiles at turns 13 and 14. And dare I say it, I'm pleasantly surprised to be seeing that the sun is in fact rising, and before the end of the first hour. So what that does is give us perhaps a little bit of confidence that we could potentially head into night racing before the end of today again. I always find it quite humorous to think as well, since the session has been advanced by 12 hours, for those who have actually shown up in game, they've shown up to a race that's running at 12 times slower than normal speed. So they'd be sitting here for 2 days waiting for these cars to finish the race. Watching here with the 54, still 0.5, now 0.6 of a second on the exit of turn 5. You see the lights have come back off for the 98 as the sun rises just yonder the horizon here in Midrand, South Africa. Not too far at all from the city of Johannesburg. What this is going to mean for the drivers as well is heading into that next hour, tyre heat is going to be a little bit more manageable. They're not going to be seeing those tyres get too cold here over the course of the last hour, as they saw in the nighttime conditions. Much harder to bed heat into those tyres when there's nothing to heat the track up. Now that the sun is starting to peak more and more over the horizon, it will start heating that track up again. It'll make it a little bit grippier for the drivers. We could see a bit more elbows out in that second half of the race. You see here for the 28, still being harassed by the 55. Out through Luakop. The 98 looking to potentially be challenged here for the race lead. Let's stay on board in that fight of first. Currently from the defending point of view with Elite Cassie. Right behind him, the Season 8 champion, White Doctor, looking to gun for the race lead. These two have had a sensational performance so far. We're not even halfway into round 7. Cutting away from the 98's point of view. Let's see if we can catch on board with the BMW attacking for position here. So catching on board with the 54 now with White Doctor on his way down towards turn 2. Still on board with these two here, just listening to the sounds of 6 cylinders on their way in towards turn 10 and 11. Now, to bring back up a previous point, just in case that we did actually end up saying this, and when we were talking about the fact that the American engines are a lot juicier, I was trying to say, and I'm pretty sure I did say it, I will go back and review the footage, and if you are watching this on YouTube and there is just a sudden cut, you'll know that I was incorrect when I first said it, but this was the same country that put an 8.4 litre V10 in a car about the size of a Corvette. I'm really hoping I didn't say company. That would have been a slight of tongue there. It was not Ford that did that. That was Dodge with the the Dodge Viper SRT. Don't know why I'm thinking so much about that point. We have got a race going on right in front of us here, but it's always the little things that tend to bother me. It's that perfectionism, as it were. Down across the line then. 57 thousandths faster in that last lap. White Doctor still gunning for the race lead. Oh, good. My Twitch chat is trying to reassure me that I didn't say company. I'm really hoping that now, otherwise I'm going to look very daft. Out through turns 3 and 4 then, the Juxkay sweep. That bizarre little run uphill does give the drivers the run they need out through turn 5, and we've seen things go already quite awry there. That was earlier on in the race for Tyler Vermack. I believe we still might have that on the replays here. This was during the night stint. Getting a look here. Actually, no, it was, as a matter of fact, this was for the stab of oversteer we saw earlier on down through turn 15. That was for White Doctor, as we just caught him there out through turn 15. There was a huge stab during that night race. Well, the night... Heading now down through to turn 10 and 11. Towards the Crocodiles. They're still watching with bated breath to see where that fight is going to go. The 98 and the 54 on their way in towards turn 15, the same area where they've had quite a few issues over the course of this race so far. We'll cut away from that fight for the lead at the moment as it starts to enter a momentary stalemate. 4/10 slower on the last lap. Not the run that he was looking for, but the run he'll have to accept. In the pit lane at the moment on their final pit stop, GTR Twiglet in the 96 car. You see up the road, Davies and Grizz, the former front row. You see that Texer F1. Oh, you're trying to get to me there. I was reading that the entire time. Just some context. One of the drivers there, I recognise him. That's Stefan Nikolai, one of the drivers for 5-Star Esports, in our Twitch chat at the moment, trying to almost gaslight me into thinking I said company. Well, just know for the fact that if I did end up saying that, it's getting cut from the YouTube release, and none of you will ever know, and you'll only get the psychotic ramblings to have followed thereafter. And if it doesn't, well, this is just going to make for a very entertaining bit towards the end of 2025. But Davies and Grizz, then the former front row under strategy, got caught up over the first pit stops of this race. They head into that second half. They find themselves 3rd and 4th, and you can see there what looks to be a little bit of nose damage for the Nissan. Now, I don't know when that cropped up for the number 44 as they head out through turns 10 and 11. It's also a bit of minor electrical damage we see there as well for the 44. The lights are flickering on his way down towards the mineshaft corner at turn 12. So we can see there the orange glow of the sun just cresting yonder the horizon here as it starts to rise onto the dawn of a new day. 5:24 a.m. local time, so on that 12 times time scale, it has been very, very quick indeed. We've got the full run of night racing, and it looks like we're in for daytime not too far from now as you start to see the cars get lit up out through turn 16. Now visibility is not going to be great for them heading out through that section of the track. Into the pits as well, of course, still is Twiglet still on that pit stop, so we could assume potentially damage for the 96. He's been in for quite some time now. Down through turn 2 now, up through turns 3 and 4. Still watching with Chris Davies here. We are going to catch back on board with the 98 and the 54 in due course. We're watching them on the mini-map there. Still looks pretty ample distance between the pair. Nothing too much to discuss right now. Closer still is the fight on screen at the moment between Chris Davies, otherwise VSR Chris, against JDM Grizz, otherwise VSR Grizz, on their way in towards turn 7. This is all for third place at the moment. So heading into the halfway mark of the race, whilst we stay on board with this fight for third place, this is the current scope of things with an hour left to go here in round 7 of VSR Phoenix Season 10. Elite Cassie leads by just about a second at the previous interval. That's now dropped to 3/4 of a second between himself and White Doctor, currently second place ahead of the former front row, which has been these two who started that race off first and second. JDM Grizz and Chris Davies now third and fourth. GTR Antion in 5th with JDM Odyssey in 6th. The Blue Frog in 7th with Shawnee Mac in 8th. Tyler Vermack in 9th and Fake Galaxy in 10th. Eurofighter in 11th with VSR Dollar Up in 12th and Twiglet in 13th. 2 DNFs today, Indian Goat and Regent of what was a 15-car grid. Actually started off with a few more drivers than that, if my memory serves correctly. We were looking up towards 17 cars for the race start, so we are down significantly there, 4 cars, but among them was Indian Goat and Regent. 2 Ferraris out of this race. Now the only Ferrari left is the one leading the charge. We're watching here with Chris versus Grizz in the fight for third. Nissan versus BMW. These two have been at it for position since the lights first went green, and we could be seeing a move here as now taking the leap up the inside through turn 7 in towards the S's at turn 8 and 9 and solidified there rather quickly, descending upon the 44, the 28 up to third. But there could be imminent fight back here. Looking up the inside, super late on the brakes. Both of them run out wide, and it's contact between the pair. That's all gone horribly, horribly wrong. The 28 holds on a position. That definitely got a little bit hairy there. What it has done is solidify his place in the top 3 at the moment, as Grizz will not be looking to challenge anywhere near as enthusiastically as he just did. That was very risky for him. He took the space, and he did leap for it, but ultimately just couldn't get the car slowed down in time. Both of them ran out wide. Looking at the fight up front here, we cut immediately on board with Elite Cassie and White Doctor down towards turn 2. Very nearly contact between the pair of them. As you can see, the track, Jesus, it is absolutely lit up there. It looks like the road to heaven for those two as they head uphill in through turn 3 and 4, the Juxkay Sweep. Barely can see anything there. Can't imagine they can see much either. Came in on a beam of light there. That was some biblical stuff between the pair. The 98 and the 54 still in arms for the race lead. Taking a look around the track now, the gap has been cleared between Vermack and Galaxy to fight for 9th place. Bear in mind, Vermack has got strategic advantage, having taken his second pit stop, but he'll be wearing himself thin in the next 55 minutes. Getting a look on board, though, with that BMW fighting for the lead here. White Doctor pursuing Elite Cassie. These two have been tearing each other limb from limb over the course of this race. They both started towards the back. They've had supreme performance all round. Now they find themselves off by their lonesome. Nearest car to them is 17.5 seconds down the line. That's Chris Davies in third on his recent move up past Grizz. These two now off by their lonesome in that leading fight for first. Oh, a huge stab there. And what it has given is Cassie the opportunity, perfectly timed there, the perfect storm, to leap to the pit lane. White Doctor off by his lonesome will take first place. He will start leading here in Kyalami. Albeit now he has got strategic disadvantage. He has to leg it now in the next stint here. He has to push forth and try his very dearest to not be undercut by the number 98. Now, if there's one thing we do know over the course of this season, Cassie has started to improve massively in terms of strategy. So this could play very, very well into the 98's hands here. Bear in mind, he's up against a driver really his own size with White Doctor. These two are almost two sides of the same coin. Very, very competitive, very, very capable drivers. And as we've seen, both of them have been struggling with the same sort of pitfalls over the course of this race here. And it's been a case that both of them have struggled for stability. And I think that's more a nature of the design of the track. We've seen time in and time again that Kyalami is not the kindest on the curbs. We've seen it throughout here that a lot of cars, not just the Ferrari and not just the BMW, to have been challenged by this circuit. It is not kind and it is indiscriminately hateful, as we've seen already. Some of the Fords as well have also been among those struggling. We saw that incident for Vermac on the exit of Turn 5 during the nighttime leg of this race in the first hour. Still in the pits there is GTR Twiglet. I think realistically we can now consider that a DNF. He is 7 laps down. There is no amount of damage one can sustain where they find themselves that far down the order in this game that doesn't result in terminal damage to the vehicle. For the time being, in second place, Chris Davies. Now broken away from Grizz, 4 seconds nearly up the road from the Nissan. These two still fighting for what remains of the podium. Under strategy, they could be intercepted by Elite Cassie. And speaking of, we just caught him there as we scrolled across. The 98 in 6th place at the moment, so he is more than enough up the road there from Tyler Vermac. No imminent threat from the number 89, also having completed their last pit stop. Taking a look at the fight of the two Mustangs just briefly here, Galaxy v Vermac. Now bear in mind, strategy still to Vermac's side of it, but in terms of that tyre longevity, having taken his pit stop not too long ago actually, that 55 of Fate Galaxy, and also having broken away from that rolling roadblock as it were in his efforts to get up and around the 28. He's now down the road from him, just making his way out of turn 6. The 55 has got clear line of sight on the 89. The 89's been forced into an unorthodox strategy, one that might not pay off in the long run for Vermac, so he could see some serious damage in his control of the championship lead. Now, we're going to bring up these scoring charts just briefly. We're just going to cross-reference them, make sure that everything's up to date for the stream itself. Let's just get a quick look at this one. So we actually do have a graphic, but we're making sure, of course, it's not the one from a few seasons ago. It's been a long time since we've spoke about the scoring system. So actually, no, we don't have the scoring, so we got rid of that in the end. So we do have the data right here. From where it stands at the moment, if Vermac, say the worst case scenario of it all, finishes in 10th place on this grid, right, he'll be taking in 24 points, and that's currently 26 points less than what White Doctor has, now actually at the front of the pack after the most recent pit lane runs by Elite Cassie. So that's the best case scenario for White Doctor, because the gap right now is at 13 points between himself and the number 89. If he wants to lead the championship heading into 2026, today is seemingly that day. Bear in mind, and I just thought about this as well, it is a double points round. So for Vermac's case, that'll be 48 points. For Doctor, that would be 100 points. So that's gonna grow exponentially to swing in his favor. The 54 could be seeing absolute pay dirt here in Kyalami, much to the chagrin of the 89 Ford. 50 minutes left to go then to seal their fate. And for the last race of 2025, it has gone out with a bang for quite a few. So looking at where it stands here as we close on to the 3/4 of an hour mark left in this race, White Doctor leads from Chris Davies in second, a BMW 1-2 as we head into that second hour proper. JDM Grizz in third with Antion fourth, and then Otzi in fifth. Please don't tell me that was a pun. What? I'm actually confused. I wasn't trying to make a pun. Lee Cassie in 6th with Blue Frog 7th, Shawnee Mac 8th, for Mac 9th. We see there on his second and last pit stop is Fake Galaxy, so he calls it quits on his efforts to intercept for Mac. Under strategy, the 89 has just got enough in the tank there with Fake Galaxy into the pit lane. For Mac, realistically, I think this could definitely be a recovery drive in the works. He is going to be a little bit ragged by the end of this race. He is going to be running a little bit over what the Mustang can normally take, so he might have the considerations of fuel by the end of today. But let's say at the best of times here, with 2 cars in front of him, and then Elite Cassie, and then the pressing factor of another 4 or 5 cars. For Mac, I'd say at the best of times, it could... You know, slim pickings here be a top 5. I'm not going to write that off straight away. That is still highly, highly speculative at this time. We'll see exactly how that pans out. But he does have 2 free positions coming up from Shawnee Mac and the Blue Frog. So we'll see exactly where he ends up after those 2. Right now, we're back on to another fight here. This time in the top 5. It's for 4th place between Antion and Otzi. Meanwhile, there is appearing to be a, well, at least according to the intervals there was that potential fight out back. That's for Fake Galaxy v Eurofighter as he actually drops in behind the 504. I believe that interval was taken just as they crossed the line. So you see here for Otzi fighting with Antion. V6 versus flat 6 yet again. That seems to be a recurring theme here. That 6-cylinder dominance in the top 5 right now. All manufacturers having produced a 6-cylinder engine, whether it's inline 6 from BMW, V6 from Nissan, or flat 6 from Porsche. We have a cornucopia of 6-cylinder engines here in Kyalami. And that seems to have been a growing theme as well, is really the 2 most popular engines, as it seems to have swung away in recent years away from the V10. It is now the V8 and the V6 that find their most prominent positions upon this grid. As a matter of fact, it's only 6 and 8-cylinder engines left here. The V10s from Lamborghini and Audi have fizzled away in the last couple of seasons. Moreover, the V12 from Aston Martin has really been something we've only seen once in a fairy tale. I think the only championship we've consistently seen a presence by a V12-powered car has been the NLRL Sunday League for 4 seasons, and with news from that the driver of it, LeBay, would be moving to Jaguar for Season 5, there is very little chance the V12 will survive into 2026. Into the pits then comes Eurofighter. That's going to push Fake Galaxy back up to the top 10 with the fastest lap. That'll be 48 points on the double point system. And that could actually be, if I remember this correctly, with an extra, I believe extra point. Would that be an extra 2 points though? Under double points regs for the 55? Or is this the league that does it where it's 3 points extra? Nonetheless, catching back on board with what's going on inside of that top 5. Antion v Otzi yet again. 45 minutes left to go in this race. Eurofighter in. He's currently been released from his jacks there. He's out of the pits in 12th. What a sound that is from the number 1. So nothing immediate yet. We are seeing at least close fighting, but nothing too elbows out. These two in a world of their own towards the back of that top 5. Vital positions up for grabs in this double points round. They'll be seeing significant improvements over the course of this round, heading into the final 5 of the season in 2026, starting at the Red Bull Ring on January 7th. So he has started to simmer down just a little bit on this grid today, as we really see the only fight going on is just at the back of that top 5. Having a glance around the field to see where the rest of the drivers are concerned right now. White Doctor leads from Chris Davies, so no interruption to what's gone on the front row so far. Still a BMW 1-2 in this race. Neither of them having a stab of a run into the pits. I believe we are again looking in toward that strategy where it's going to be in the last 30 minutes we see that second run of the pits. A lot of the drivers who have done so beforehand have either been experimenting or have done so on a form of compromise. It's been usually from damage. We've seen drivers forced into the pit lane on most occasions today. Namely, such in the case for both Fake Galaxy and Tyler Vermack, the two Mustangs waylaid from a top 5 result. They're towards the back of the top 10 at this time. You see here from the race leader, the number 54 of White Doctor in towards the Crocodiles, then turns 13 and 14, now having carved 17.5 seconds up the road from Chris Davies. His closest competition was coming from Elite Cassie for quite some time in this race. Now as we're firmly back into daytime, 8:47 a.m. local, 42.5 minutes left to go here in Kyalami, and no current indication of a run to the pits for at least another 12 minutes. We'll see though as we drop in beneath the 40-minute mark to see if there will be the signs of an early run in for the 54. I think it's all going to be performance dependent right now. He's going to try and run it until the car starts to feel wrong, similar to what brought him into the pits the first time around, and that's been the same story as well for Elite Cassie. These two playing off of where the car draws the line as opposed to where they draw the line. Still in the pits then, Twiglet, I believe, just watching now from the paddock how the rest of this race unfolds. 41 minutes, 50 seconds left to go, just under 42 here in round 7. We're on board with Chris Davies in the number 28. Now, bear in mind, started upon that front row under strategy, is liable to lose out on the front row, but could yet still see a podium by the end of today's round. So it would still be redemption in his eyes. Of course, he would still lament what could have been of his performance today. He was battling with Grizz for the longest time for that race lead. Moreover, he got his hands full from both sides as he was both attacking and defending from the middle of that podium. I think just to find himself on the podium by the end of this race still stands as a great achievement and has allowed for a great resolve out of the 28 so far. Now to bring back up those championship standings as we just bring away the timer, 41 minutes left to go. And this is where it stood coming into today's round, a 13-point gap between Vermack and White Doctor. And we see here the number 28 of VSR Chris, otherwise Chris Davies, is third in the championship. Now he's a fair distance away from the top 2. And his priority there is staying ahead of Elite Cassie in 4th and Otzi in 5th. Those are his two primary targets here. Under strategy, he could lose that position out to Cassie, and under double points, it'd be double the points gap that he's liable to miss out on. So coming into those final 5, he does want to stay close as he possibly can to the front 2 of the pack, but it is going to be continued difficulty for him today. His priority, though, is just to stay with that top 3, is to try and be on the podium by the end of this season. Right now, it does still appear to be that 2-horse race. His main targets, it's a 5-point gap between himself and Elite Cassie. And then between himself and Otzi is a 10-point gap. So very, very close. Claustrophobically so here into the second half of the championship. It's the Plums in chat asking, is there a Discord for this league? I'm interested. Yes, we'll throw the link in toward the Discord server for VSR Phoenix. That's what this championship is for, of course. We're in Season 10, Round 7, if you're just joining us now. So now, having just been pasted there into the Twitch chat with any hopes, you should see the Discord link to VSR Phoenix. So cutting away from Chris Davies here to look on board with Elite Cassie. Bear in mind, he's only about 3 seconds off the beat here from a top 5 spot. He might not have to wait for these two to roll into the pit lane in the next 9 or so minutes to have a stab at 4th place. As you can see it right in front of his very eyes there out of the exit of turn 5. So staying on board with the 98. As he's got front row tickets here to that fight we were watching earlier on for 4th place between Antion and Otzi. The fight on 6 cylinders, Flat VV. Nissan and Porsche head to head there for 4th place. We'll stay on board with the number 98. Oh, a huge hit though for Cassie, and that's collected at the tyre wall damage for the 98. Bear in mind, he's already taken his 2 mandatory pit stops. This is not great news for Cassie. Let's get a look at that on the replays there. It looked to be a pretty classic story there. Hit over the curb on the inside. You can see all 4 wheels for but a moment there were completely clear of the ground. There was nothing he could have done past that point. As past a certain point through turn 15, he became what was effectively one of the most expensive projectile weapons on this grid as he was propelled out towards the gravel. Getting a look there once again, just fully plummets over the curbs there at Cheetah. That's not gone well for him. Still finds himself with ample damage, but by looks of it, they're only 5 seconds away from what is now a fight of 3rd. As in the meantime of all of this, he has found his way into the top 5 as in the pits went the Blue Frog and the number 62 Bentley. Looking up the order, though, this is where the fight has started to hot up between these two. A little bit of an awkward run for him out through turn 5. Moreover, the 98 in even more trouble. The yellow flag's out, this time down at turn 6. What on earth has happened here for the number 98 of Elite Cassie? It is disaster here in South Africa. Out through turn 6, the car has gone horribly awry, likely because of the earlier damages ensued from his first impact down at turn 15. The car has washed out massively, and as we can see there, by the way that he's crawling out through turn 7, that appears to be steering damage as well. So it is a green flag at the moment. I would definitely consider it a rolling white flag, and that's what the stewards seem to believe at the moment, registering that as a rolling white flag on the map for a slow-moving car as Elite Cassie tries to nurse his Ferrari back into good health. Bear in mind, this has been the capitalizing point for GTR Antion. He's into the pit lane. Meanwhile, we also saw Chris Davies was into the pits not too long ago. So, and amongst all of the action there for the 98, we completely missed out on the 28 pit run. Bear in mind, he's already well up the road, still in the top 5, looking to take 4th place off of Antion. He's in the pits at the moment. It leaves Otzi out by his lonesome. Grizz, the same story there for the 2 Nissans, still inside of the top 5. And for White Doctor, it's smooth sailing for the number 54 as he just laps past the number 98. The 28 now into the top 4. He's onto that 2nd row, and with any chances here, could be 2nd by the end of this race. This has all come full circle for him. One of his most lively forms of competition on the podium. Same story for White Doctor, has been the 98, and with that now plucked from the equation, that does introduce a very, very unique set of circumstances to follow in the next 35.5 minutes. Into the pits then comes the number 98. It has been disaster for Elite Cassie. I would say that this is great, great news then for that of Chris Davies. There was the fear coming into this round that he could have been intercepted by Cassie with the performance that the 98 had had for some time. He had just made his way up to 3rd place. Now it looks like his podium position heading into 2026 is secured with 35 minutes to the line. For Mac now up to 6th place, Blue Frog to 7th. Cassie is now, I'm told, the 98 has withdrawn, by looks of it there, from this race with catastrophic damage. That makes another DNF onto the list. There are only 11 cars left in this race, 12 if you consider the 96, which has already retired. The car to the pit lane is just still on track with us. The number 6 comes in. Here's JDM Oatsy in one of the 2 Nissans, with JDM Grizz still out by his lonesome. He makes his way up the Juxgay sweep, still leading that charge as the 54. Oatsy into the pits there. That allows Chris Davies to move on to the podium positions. For Antion, could it be a potential move up toward 4th place? Bear in mind, he's got ample company there behind him. That's Tyler Vermack in pursuit. So now we cut on board with the Porsche, forced to defend here. This could get dicey between himself and Vermack. Let's cut on board with the attacking point of view here, as he'll have the run down that opening straight to come and have a go for position. On board with Tyler Vermack, the number 6 picks up a stop and go 30 for speeding in the pit lane. So that's disastrous for JDM Oatsy. Meanwhile, we watch here with Vermack in what is now the fight of 4th, down towards turn 2. Staying very close here to the hindquarters of that Porsche. Flat 6 versus V8. Vermack on real redemption form here, could be looking at a chance to move up to what is effectively a first stab position here of a potential podium. Taking a look at where things stand at the moment, Grizz is in. So I don't know if that's 100% the case. With Grizz being in, he's likely to lose that position out to Davies. We see up the inside goes Vermack on Antion. We know he's got the momentum with the Ford to just get down on the throttle there and keep himself side by side. The question is, as he goes up the inside, is he going to sell himself short down through turn 9? Is he going to leave himself open for the Porsche? The simple answer, no. Heading up towards Lillicop at turns 10 and 11. Had the Porsche be just a little bit closer, I'd say there's definitely a chance for the number 1 to have had a leap up the inside. We know what its stopping power is like, as we saw back in the Sunday League in Season 3 at the hands of Cas van Veltzen. Otherwise, Elite Cassie on this grid. Down through turn 12 we go. In towards turn 13 and 14, just a little too far away. So close, yet so far away. And that's got to be rather frustrating for Antion. For Vermack, though, he's going to be beaming ear to ear to see himself back up into the top 5. He knows he'll still be close enough in the championship fight right now, as he looks to unlap himself from White Doctor coming into the pits. We've also seen into the pits, there goes JDM Oatsy to serve their stop-go 30-second penalty. Bear in mind, in a straight-line argument, it's highly unlikely Antion could get up and around the Ford of Vermack, but not impossible, strictly. As we see, he is close enough to potentially eye up a move to the inside, and he is looking to commit towards it, down towards Crowthorns. Is he trying to get inside the 89's head, force him to run out wide? It definitely looks to be the case, carrying the momentum out through turn 2 into turns 3 and 4. Vermack there, temporarily jolted by such a suggestion by the number 1. Great attacking by Antion, still trying to get inside the 89's head here, force him to make a mistake by throwing these almost kamikaze moves in his direction and then backing out at the last second. Wouldn't be a VSR Phoenix race without a little bit of that old psychological warfare that these drivers love to do on each other, and they've done that throughout Season 10. They did a little bit less of that in Season 9. They did a lot more of it in Season 8. Number 6 has now been cleared of their stop and go, so for Oatsy, he's clear to go for the next 31 minutes to the checkered flag for Nissan. Meanwhile, we had a huge mix-up there on the grid. Grizz is 3rd, and so it appears the White Doctor still leads here, with Chris Davies now to 2nd. We're still watching this fight for 4th. Vermack v Antion has been a very compelling one here into the closing 30 minutes of racing. Vermack, by the way, had to take a very early 2nd pit stop, so he does find himself running that number 89 Ford down to the ragged edge here towards the checkered flag today. Differing lines out through turn 13, running the long way is the 89, keeping the momentum clean for the run into turn 15. Holds his nerve towards turn 16, and just like that, Vermack holds on a position in towards Ingray Curve. Just briefly cutting away from those two to have a look at the rest of the field, see where they're concerned. Nissan's still on for a podium today at the hands of JDM Grizz. He emerged from the pit lane in 3rd place, 11.5 seconds up the road from Tyler Vermack. Now with 30 minutes to the line, is it a chance here that he could bring that gap down to 0? Definitely say it's a bit of a coin toss in terms of what is going to happen for a potential third place fight. Considering that Grizz, for all intents and purposes, has been no slouch today here in Kyalami. He's put on a royal fight up against first Chris Davies and then up against White Doctor and Elite Cassie. Ultimately, he's been a real trooper in that Nissan. Same story for Davies in that 28 BMW. Both of them have been very, very strong in today's race. One driver we've not paid too much attention to over the course of this race, and that's because he's found himself sort of waylaid, out lost in the middle of the field. And if we go and find him there, the number 62, formerly the 61 of the Blue Frog, took damage, so I'm told, at turn 3, still sailing. So he has been a very silent prowl up towards the middle of the top 10. He has slowly made his way through the night to be in a competitive position by the end of this race. Bear in mind, he, like several drivers on this grid, started towards the back and was admittedly very bizarre qualifying session. But like many drivers as well to have done so, he has capitalized massively on the chaos created here in Kyalami to put himself in a powerful spot. And it's another top 10 appearance coming up in the next 28 minutes for this one. The number 62 of the Blue Frog, the Season 9 champion in the Porsche Cups, has been sporting the Bentley all season and has been a very prominent sight towards the back of the pack, and that's by volition. That's been his choice to start towards the back and work his way up through the order. Now, I believe when they were asked about this, both he and Regent gave roughly the same consensus, which is qualifying up towards the front and having fewer opportunities to fight with people is just a bit boring. So that was being their main reasoning behind it. Is the whole reason they want to start towards the back is more fun. They have the opportunity to fight with drivers. It helps them cut their teeth in terms of overtaking etiquette. It helps them stay engaged in the race. It is admittedly a very bizarre choice, but it has ultimately helped for both of these drivers in terms of their welfare. They have been doing a lot better this season. I think they've been a lot happier this season as well, and it's good to see that here towards the end of 2025. It was a bit of a dark place for some heading out of the last couple of seasons. And there was a real low spot in the community at one point. To see that this season has really brought us all back into good form, rejuvenated the grid, is a great sign to see, I would say. Reflecting on how things have been in our time with VSR over the course of our first year with them here in 2025, it has been, I'd say, a pretty good affair. We've seen the highs and lows of it all. In the final race of 2025, this has definitely been quite the epitome of what VSR has brought to the table. A lot of mayhem and a lot of solid racing. Speaking of solid racing, we were watching some time ago in that fight for Antion v Vermaak. We now re-emerge to this fight with Vermaak after taking that position is now much further up the road, 2.4 seconds now, as Antion slowly bleeds away to the back of that top 5. It's been a very valiant effort, though, by the number 1, make no mistake of it. With just under 27 minutes before the checkered flag, he has done quite a solid job here, especially considering with the kind of cars we see in that top 5, BMWs, Nissans, Fords, all dominant straight line runners. The Porsche, we know, is rather anemic in the straight. It's very capable when tucked in around other cars. It's one of, in terms of pound for pound, in terms of corner for corner, one of the best cars to have in a proper scrap 4 position. I'd say some other cars to throw in as honourable mentions. A lot of the mid-engine cars are great for fighting in close proximity. Elite Cassie joining us in the chat there. A small concentration mistake and you're out. Was a good race so far. I suppose, yeah, it's definitely been a rough race for some. I would say that. And with the way things went away, of course, reflecting back on that incident, as we see here, the 55 being intercepted by the 54. Now, I sense maybe just a little bit of a theme here. I don't know if these two are in cohorts. Of course, we do know White Doctor has competed for the 5-star esports team. This is obviously not their colours. So I'm curious to know who Fake Galaxy is, because we have seen the drivers operate under their real names, but these are, of course, all aliases for the most part, bar Chris Davies, who is running his actual name. And Tyler Vermaak as well, who was also running his actual name. To bring up the incident from earlier on that took Elite Cassie into the wall, it was a trip over through turn 15, and like he said there, a small concentration mistake and you're out. This track has been absolutely brutal, and he's been one of the most recent DNFs in this race. A sad way to round out 2025 for him, but he has had a very, very solid run of things in the last 6 or so rounds. Taking a look back through the previous race winners this season as we stay on board with this fight to lap round the 55. These two cars that, I must say, it's rather satisfying to see how similar they look to one another with that currently matching paint scheme. Taking a look at those previous wins, of course, Cassie took his last win in round 2 at Brands Hatch. It's been White Doctor and Tyler Vermack to majoritively dominate this championship throughout, with White Doctor winning 3 times so far and looking at his chances of a 4th race win to round out 2025 here in Season 10. Tyler Vermack having taken 2 race wins, his most recent at that last round in Bathurst, New South Wales, Australia last Wednesday. 24.5 minutes left to go then here in Kyalami. So we see the 54 still trying to get around the 55. Now, this has accidentally become a bit of a benefit towards White Doctor because it is some free slipstream here. What it's also going to help is his fuel economy. Now, if it were a longer race, I'm sure that would have a more pronounced effect. But, you know, I'm not sure that he is going to be saying no to the opportunity to spend a little less fuel to keep the car up in the form that it's in. We have seen, and I believe in this championship as well, we have seen drivers' races come apart in the last couple of laps because of fuel. So you never want that to happen, especially if you're leading. I'm sure, of course, the 54 has thought long and hard about this, and this is mostly just us speculating. Taking a look then around the field as we drop in towards the final 20 minutes, not far from now. White Doctor leads in the number 54, and in second place it's a BMW 1-2 with Chris Davies now up past Grizz in 2nd place. Grizz at the back of the podium there, still an admirable show of force by Nissan today. Tyler Vermack in 4th place with GTR Antion in 5th. In 6th place there, the Blue Frog in the Bentley, a very silent procession for the 62, took damage early doors in this race and finds himself still in a competitive position, not too far away from him, I should remark as well, by only a couple corners. This could still be interception material for the 55. Fake Galaxy with the fastest lap. JDM OT in 8th place with JDM Shawnee Mack in 9th. Eurofighter to round out the top 10 with Dollar Up in 11th. Twiglet, you can see there in the pit lane, is one of several DNFs here in Kyalami. It's been a brutal race here to bring us to the end of the 2025 leg of Season 10. We're closing in on the last 20 or so minutes here. 23 minutes left to go in Kyalami. We're back on board with the Blue Frog for the time being. We'll leave you on board with this one here, and we'll be back in just a moment's time. So as we cut away now from the Blue Frog, let's take a look at the rest of the field here. We drop into 21 minutes left to go. JDM Grizz still on for a podium, and now the continued discussion picks back up where we last left off. Now, it was previously 11.5 seconds we observed between Vermack and Grizz. Now that gap sits at just under 8.5. So in the time we've left away from them, it's already been an advancement of 3 seconds there for the number 89. So the question of whether or not he could intercept Grizz is definitely still on the table here. And if he can pick up on 3rd place, just to bring back up that scoring chart again, to have a look through the way things would line up with White Doctor still on for a race win today. He'll be looking at his 4th this season to round out 2025. It'll be 100 points for him. He'll be denied of that fastest lap point so far by that of Fake Galaxy. Way down the order at this time by comparison. But for Vermaak, if he can find his way to third place, he's still looking at around there from the 100 points that White Doctor will be getting. He'll be getting around 82 points on that. So a factor there of about, looking at it, 12 points. So he would just about be still in the lead by a single point heading into Red Bull Ring at round 8. So those are the stakes right now. If he wants to stay in the lead of the championship, he now has a clear and defined understanding of the position he ought to be in, and it's the one currently held here by the number 44 of VSR Grizz. Currently on the grid, JDM Grizz. As part of the growing notion this season of the sort of infighting, the clan battle, as it were, between GTR, VSR, and JDM, these various faction offshoots for Season 10. Introduced a little later on from the opening round at the Nürburgring. We see here still side-by-side action between these two. Fake Galaxy has not made this an easy ride to get up and around him for the number 54, but finally there we see White Doctor up and ahead of the 55. Now, of course, we've discussed at length the gap between that of the leading two, but let's just talk about another element on the podium here as well to bring back up those championship standings. Of course, Vermaak leading today by 13 points. If he gets to third place, he'll hold it by still a single point. But talking there about Chris in third place. Now, to get close to Vermaak, we see there with 290 points for Vermaak, 214 for Chris. That is a factor of, looking at it there, about 76 points between the pair. Now, there's absolutely no chance, unless Vermaak DNFs today, that he'll be making a 76-point leap over that second place car. But he could definitely start to chip away at it here. Where he's standing, he'll be finishing the race with 90 points, as it's 45 points for a standard race. With this being double points, it'll be 90 points for Davies. If Vermaak can make his way to third, that is, again, talking there in a factor of about 82 points. So really, it's only a factor of about 8 points, but still, the point is still there that he could be chipping away on that position. And that would be the procession up towards second that he's been much searching for over the course of this season. Not an awful lot to discuss then in the last 20 or so minutes of racing. We're down to 17 minutes as we cut in here with GTR Antion off by his lonesome now, just at the back of that top 5. As for how many points he'll be picking up, 70 in total as of right now, with no fastest lap, but 5th place. That's 35 points times by 2 to give us 70. Of course, these are all speculative. It can still change for these drivers in the next 16 minutes and 40 seconds. We see here with Fake Galaxy, something you really got to appreciate from the 55, considering the kind of time he had in the opening hour where he was into the pits very early with a lot of damage to repair on that 55. The fact that he has turned this around in the closing quarter hour to put himself in 7th place, and mind you, only one mistake out of that Bentley away from being within a stab of 6th place. That is a very admirable comeback drive from Fake Galaxy. He's knuckled down. He's had superior pace to the rest of the field. So that has been his major selling point, his major dividing factor. Had it not been for that one mistake, he'd be right now in that fight with the 54 right up in front of him. But fate acts in very cruel and mysterious ways. And sadly for the 55, he misses out on that opportunity this time around in terms of how many points he'll be raking in by finishing in 7th. It'll be 60 points. So ample points haulage in for the 55 coming into the next 5 rounds of competition. Now, to bring that back up for the last time before the end of this race, taking a look at how far we've come into the season. We're here at round 7, the last stop in the 2025 leg here in Kyalami. Double points in a 2-hour race if you're joining us just now in the closing 15 minutes. And then looking into that second part of the calendar into next year after the winter break, we'll be coming into round 8 at the Red Bull Ring, back into the sprint rounds, then 2-hour-long races, another sprint at round 11, and then another hour-long race. So no more double points rounds. It was make or break for plenty of drivers on the grid. This will be as large as it gets for points tallies for them before they head back in to the standard point scoring system, which is from first down to 10th, 50, 45, 41, 38, 35, 32, 30, 28, 26, and 24. With the numbers going all the way down to points available for the top 24 positions, with P24 getting only 5 points. The point scoring charts are available for you to find on the VSR Phoenix Discord in the standings section for those of you curious to find out more about that. Looking at it here as we drop into the last 15 or so minutes of racing. This is what we can expect of the road ahead. Now, I'm thoroughly excited for those first 2 races of 2026 here in Season 10. Of course, no bias whatsoever for Silverstone. The Red Bull Ring has already proven to be a fantastic race, no matter the championship. So it is definitely going to be a great venue to come back to. Bright, ready and rejuvenated then for more fighting in 2026. I'm sure these drivers have been waiting for a much-awaited break here, and long deserved for a lot of these drivers. They've been real soldiers throughout this season. And it's not been an easy one. I will say that much. This has been one of the most competitive seasons we've had in a long time here on VSR Phoenix. It's not been clear who can lead it. It's not been clear who's dominating. It has still been very close, and for it to have carried on for this long is a great sign of things to come into that second half. We passed past the not the second half, the halfway mark, I should say, of the season at round 6 last Wednesday in Bathurst. So we are technically still into that second half, but we are heading into it proper now, into the end of 2025 into 2026. Most recent news then comes from the 89 Tyler Vermack on a most recent move to 4th place on this grid, not too far off the advent of being on the podium, has been given a drive-through penalty for track limits infraction. So it has all come asunder here for the 89. His chances to command the race lead heading into 2026 has come away from him, with one more lap to serve this before he is dealt with a sizable penalty, or perhaps even a disqualification. 13 minutes looms around the corner for the 89 as his chances to lead have just been squashed. Had he made his way to 3rd place, he would have led by a single point coming into the Red Bull Ring round at round 8 in 2026. This time around, though, it looks to be a swing run for the number 54 for White Doctor to lead and to be onto the run of his potential 2nd championship. Now, of course, looking back through the history of championship winners, we brought this up earlier in the broadcast today. There has only been one driver ever to do so. That's VSR Chris, otherwise Chris Davies on the grid, who's won 2 championships in Season 3 and Season 6. We are potentially in the bookings here to see history in the making, as the 2nd ever multiple-time champion could creep through heading in towards January and February. That being potentially White Doctor. But I'd say it still hangs very firmly in the balance here as to whether or not it would be Doctor or if it could be Vermack. But for Vermack, this has come all too late and all too at the worst possible time here, especially with his championship lead up for grabs in this round. It's a bittersweet feeling then for the 89, but we know over the course of that winter break he'll be trialing himself, getting ready for those 5 rounds to follow, and it'll be all hands on deck then for Vermack in his pursuits of a first ever VSR Phoenix championship win. Into the pits he goes then, rather reluctantly, to serve that drive-through penalty. This is great news though if you're VSR Antion, because after that most recent move you'll be seeing your way back up to 4th place. I suppose the one upside of it is getting your drive-through penalty in Kyalami. It is a very short pit lane. It doesn't look it, but it is actually one of the shorter ones in circulation. So for Vermack, he just re-emerges in the top 5 here. From where he stands coming to the end of this race, he'll be getting around 70 points as opposed to the 100 that White Doctor is getting from the front of the pack there. That gives him a 30-point leeway, meaning that White Doctor will lead the championship in and around the range there of, I think, about 17 points. I'll do the maths on that in the background, but as we head into the last 10 minutes, things are starting to get very, very dicey here between these two, especially with that introduction of a drive-through penalty. Now, I think for that front row, for the 54, and by proxy for the 28, they'll both be hoping that they don't get caught out by track limits. You can see a lot of drivers have been getting a little bit more ambitious with it. I'm assuming that is the same reason we saw the run for the number 89 into the pit lane. The 54 now just has to keep it nice and calm for the next 10 or so minutes, functionally looking at the advent of about 6, maybe 7 more laps before the end of round 7. For White Doctor, it's his race to lose. We'll stay on board with the race leader for the time being as we just quickly run some calculations in the background. Okay, so we've done the maths there. And it was, yes, he'll be leading by 17 points if they are to finish where they are. Bear in mind, that's not with the consideration of the fastest lap. That still holds on into the hands of the 55 just behind him there in 7th place. Fake Galaxy still holds the fastest lap of any one driver on this track. It was a very dominant run for the 55 in the early moments of this race. Heading into its final moments, he'll find himself at the best of times looking at 7th place here on the exit of turn 15. White Doctor, again, it's very, very anxiety-inducing seeing him step over those lines. We've already seen it catch out for Mac. It is not out of the realm of possibility there, as you saw all 4 wheels over the white line on the exit of the Ingray curve. 1 minute 42 dead from there in that last lap. He actually found himself slower by about 45 thousandths of a second over Fake Galaxy. For the race leader, he's got to start thinking about taking this maybe just a little bit easy now, knowing he's got a far enough away gap from anyone else on the grid. The nearest car to him would be that 28, who's just on his way in towards the Crocodiles. And looking at it there, that's about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 corners ago. So he's really got this one in the bag, but I wouldn't be surprised if he keeps pushing. We've seen this happen before. Not our first rodeo in a situation like this. For Chris Davies, he's in 2nd place at the moment, 14 seconds up the road from JDM Grizz. Now, if he is to pick up a drive-through penalty, this is highly speculative and not to say that he will, but should he pick up one, he might still just be able to salvage that. We've seen how short the run through the pits is. We'll question on whether or not it's short enough to where 14 seconds can be negated. I think in theory that 44 would still catch. So we'll hope for the 28's sake, as we've already seen, no one is exempt from getting those track limits penalties. We'll hope the 28, like the 54, can keep things nice and calm in the next 8 minutes of racing. For Antion, he's still in 4th place. The gap 6.7 seconds. Now 6.5 at the last interval. 142.482 over a 143.132 puts Vermac faster of the two in this speculative fight of 4th place. With 7 minutes left to go, only a handful of more laps. Could he close the gap down and potentially force his way to 4th place? I'm sure that'll weigh quite heavy on the mind of the 89. He's just up through the Jockskay sweep as the number 1 continues down between turns 5 and 6. So that is one to consider, one to keep in the back of one's mind here in the next 7 minutes of racing. 6.2 seconds and looking to close down actually quite quickly in this middle sector. The 89 is in pursuit of GTR Antion in the number 1 Porsche here. For Fake Galaxy, like the driver up in front of him being the Blue Frog in 6th place, 20 seconds up the road, both of them have experienced a very interesting start to this race, and both of them have made fantastic comeback drives. 6th and 7th towards the end of this race. The Blue Frog taking damage early. Even more damage was over the nose of that of the 55. Had it been a slightly longer race, I'd have no doubts in my mind the 55 would have enough pace to fight with the 62 by the end of this race. Had it been maybe 3 hours of racing, that's definitely on the cards. He's been the fastest of any one driver by a long shot. 1 minute 40.825 was his fastest lap, and that is yet to be beaten by any driver on track over the course of the last hour. And looking at it here, 54 minutes thereabouts in a very rough gauge there to the line. To catch on board here with Tyler Vermac, we are seeing that gap start to wither away. 143.067 for GTR Antion. We see here from Vermac across the line, 142.332. So he is up by 7 tenths in that last lap alone. So that's remarkably fast from there. The gap is definitely likely to close down. The question is, will it be soon enough? 5 minutes, just under 6 left to go in this race. The clock is ticking for that race leader. We've just seen down across the start finish line there, 141.747. Found himself 0.2 faster thereabouts over Fake Galaxy, actually a little under 0.2 of a second, about 160 thousandths. So 1/10, 600ths. Sliding his way out of turn 2 at Crowthorns. We are looking at about 4 more laps here for this one. Not really an awful lot left to discuss. It's been a strategy intensive race for our drivers today. There have been those spots of fighting for quite some time. We do see here down the order, Dollar up in close proximity to Grizz. Of course, this isn't for position, so you can't really consider it a fight here. Dollar up trying to unlap himself so that he can be within a chance to continue up the road, but with time so short and 10th so far away, his chances to see a top 10 at the end of this race have slipped away in the last 30 or so minutes. The two Nissans in close proximity to one another. I suppose you could say close proximity. It's 18 seconds, if that's your definition. Down through the S's, the number 6 and the number 4, the two JDMs of Oatsy and Shawnee Mac. They still make the top 10 here. That makes 3 JDM cars in the top 10. White Doctor sliding out through turn 15. He's really thrown caution to the wind. You've got to hand it to him there. He's quite gung-ho about this one. Out through turn 16, all 4 wheels again over the line. I'm not sure how he's not been penalised yet. That is quite a shocker. We've seen if the 89 has been penalised, how has it not been the case that some others have fell victim to this? Evidently, we might have to refresh our knowledge on the exact track limits here in Kyalami. Something these drivers know that we clearly don't. Now, to pick back up on this speculation fight, 4th place potentially still up for grabs, but as we've seen here, progression has started to slow down for Tyler Vermack. He has just broken in to beneath the 5-second barrier. Question is can he make the time up in what is effectively 2 more laps here? He has been able to claw things in, but is it going to be a case that he'll just be short of it in his efforts to get around the number 1 in 4th place? Where it stands at the moment, Vermack will lose the championship lead. It'll be overtaken by White Doctor by 17 points heading into the Red Bull Ring. If it's 4th place, then he'll be seeing a point tally. Oh, my mistake there. That was actually, we were counting it for P5, so we'll have to do a quick rerun of the maths here. So if he's to finish in P5, actually no, yes, so we were completely right. We were completely right. I'm not crazy. I'm just tired. Oh, Lord, it has been a very, very long year for us here on TRTN, and one that we are very thankful for, and we're not actually done just yet. We've got 2 more races in 2025 with the Competizione Performance League in their Triple Crown coming up this Sunday, and next with their final round coming up on January 3rd. It's been a long old year, and I think both us and the drivers have earned a much well-deserved rest, I should say. You can see that my ability to speak anything closely resembling eloquent English has started to disappear in the last couple of weeks. It's the slow but gradual move to madness. I think that's really the best way to describe it in the last couple of weeks, maybe the last couple of months here on TRTN, but we wouldn't miss it for the world to show out to these events. They have been fantastic so far this season. Last season as well, I mean, reflecting back onto season 9, I still hold it to high regard, even if the drivers never really wanted to show up for it. I still believe that Porsche Cup has a place in ACC. It is just a case where it's not been able to claw out its cultural niche as of right now. Just one moment, though. We'll hold on to that. The 28 is into the pits. That's Chris Davies. What happened here? It doesn't look like damage. Could it be fuel that's the concern for Davies? He's been forced into the pits. So for JDM Grizz, he'll move up to 2nd place. Nissan up to the front row. What's gone on here for Davies? I think it was fuel. He drops off the jacks. He could lose out to Antion. He makes his way out through Ingwe. It's a run down to the exit of the pits here as we make our way onto what is going to be the final run of laps not too far from now. Just leaving the pits in a closing margin. There you can see the BMW from the point of view of Antion. Meanwhile, just out back of him, closing in and closing in fast by 3.2 seconds is Tyler Vermaak. Things could have just hotted up here. The 54 has a drive-through penalty. The worst has come to fruition. We did have it on the charts for a while. How has he not found it now? He's found it at the very last post here. A drive-through penalty on the final lap. This is the worst possible outcome for the 54. He looks to potentially pick up a penalty. So the answer as to who's coming through with a race win has just been thrown wayward to the sky. Who will emerge as the race win? Because as he takes his drive-through penalty, he'll be getting a sizable penalty past the checkered flag. So how exactly is this going to work? This might have just come out to be, in the final race of 2025 for VSR Phoenix, one of the most bizarre finishes we're about to see. We can't call it. Will it be the 54 that wins in this race? Will it be the number, looking down the line there, the number 44? If the penalty isn't substantial enough, it could very well still be the 54. We'll see though. This is truly, truly bizarre. We don't know how to call it here. And this is not the first time in VSR history that we've been confused down here at Kyalami. Some of you may remember the data mismanagement error that we had back in Season 8 in regards to the division standings. Well, this time around, this isn't on us. This is simply a fact that who can call it as to how this will pan out. He's going to be taking his drive-through penalty on the last lap. We see here with White Doctor, could it be a fourth race win? It's completely up in the air right now. This has been not a way to end one's race, but we'll see exactly if he does emerge as the race winner. The checkered flag will come out, but we'll hold our horses in terms of crowning him the race winner because he's not going into the pits. He's going to face the music here, and what awaits him around the corner as he makes his way to the checkered flag? This is a bizarre one. Across the line he goes then with a 30-second penalty. I think by proxy there, that should be enough. We'll wait for the official result of it. With the 44, yes, a considerable distance away. So as it stands, that's a fourth race win for White Doctor against very bizarre odds. Now, I thought the penalty would have been higher for not serving the drive-through penalty. I thought it was up in the range of 130 seconds or perhaps even a DSQ. But now we've been reminded it's actually a little bit more on the tame side. He was willing to take the risk. The 54 only 30 seconds penalized, and as you can see, the 44, which is miles down the road at this time, isn't close enough to lay a dent on those times. We see here a potential fight for third. When did that change, asks Regent? Beats me. I mean, I thought it was always 130 seconds or a DSQ. It was always between one of those two. We've seen hefty penalties before. Failing to field a driver in a multi-driver race is 130 seconds. I always had it on my mind that it was going to be a DSQ for not serving the drive-through. I don't remember when that changed. We're seeing, though, down towards the line here, JDM Grizz to second place in this race. A great result for Nissan, but all the way down to the checkered flag. Looks to be a fight for third. Chris Davies versus GTR Antion. And down towards the checkered flag, they're separated by next to nothing. 625 thousandths of a second divide the second row. Davies third, Antion fourth, Vermaak to fifth. So as it stands, leading the championship into 2026 will be White Doctor by 17 points over Tyler Vermaak. Seeing the full results there further down the line. Blue Frog in sixth, Fake Galaxy in seventh with the fastest lap. JDM Otzi in 8th, Shawnee Mac 9th, Eurofighter 10th, and Dollar Up in 11th. I'd say driver of the day would likely be White Doctor, but I'll leave it up to the folks in the VSR Phoenix Discord server to decide that for their very own. Having a stab at a few different ideas here. I mean, you'd be looking at some of those performances, those turnaround performances as well. Fake Galaxy, Blue Frog, White Doctor there was just... It was in on that fight for the top three within the span of half a lap, and he started towards the back alongside several other drivers. You can see the myriad of DNFs we've had there. Elite Cassie, Twiglet, Region, Indian Goat, and Smiler and Zetu, all DNFs here in what has been a brutal final race of 2025, but we're not done just yet. Looking into that second calendar, and this will be the primary calendar into 2026, the next round coming up January 7th. round 8 at the Red Bull Ring, back into the sprint format, and then Silverstone and Laguna Seca for the hour-long format, one final sprint in Barcelona as the penultimate round of the championship gives rise to the season finale on February 4th, round 12, an hour in Suzuka. Until then, though, that's the end of the broadcast year for VSR Phoenix here in 2025. There is potential speculation over a special event coming next week, but we have no confirmation at this time. As far as you or I are concerned for Season 10, that's the end of the road for 2025. If we don't see you until that point, we do have some more events coming up with other leagues. If we don't see you until that next round coming, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from us here on TRTN. And that has been a fantastic race indeed. Very well done to White Doctor, his 4th career win in Season 10 alone. Well, that's all from us here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night.